Hello and welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Explore our playlist for more captivating novels, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new audiobook. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 21. Information Island and Master Songs. Except for network issues, many chemical plants that have not yet been able to fully transfer have also experienced leakage and explosion accidents, making a large number of surface environments worse. As for more specific information, it is no longer possible to provide it online. Suwu switched to the chat group and found that even the small group composed of the master of the shelter was still dead at this time. No news was received at all. He sighed and closed the group chat. Continue to use the camera on the second floor of the farmyard to observe the situation outside. The light was even darker than a few hours ago. Even goose feather-like dust began to fall from the sky. It was the burning smoke that condensed in the clouds and fell down. The only good news is that there are no traces of fire on the mountains in the distance. I don't know if it was completely blocked by the dust rain or it was burned out. Stay waiting. In the current environment, Suwu can't do anything. Drones will definitely not take off, but medium-sized trucks can be driven out. However, the information that can be collected by relying on the camera on the truck alone is extremely limited. If the fire in the city has not been curbed, maybe when the danger is discovered, it will be too late to escape. And after Suwu gave up trying to explore the situation outside, the engineering team's excavation of the third underground floor of the shelter is still advancing in an orderly manner. They maintain their existing rhythm and shatter, excavate and transport underground rock formations for 24 hours. The space of the shelter is expanding bit by bit. High temperatures, poisonous gas, and the ashes and dust falling from the sky cannot affect them at all. Evening. The rain of ashes that kept falling finally showed signs of a halt. The temperature dropped slightly with the disappearance of the sun. Stable at around 58 degrees. Suwu released the drone reconnaissance formation and headed straight towards the city. Soon, a devastated city appeared in the camera of a drone. The only wall frames left were burned by the fire. The doors and windows of residential areas and indoor furniture are completely unable to see what they originally looked like. Either distort or transformed directly into ashes. The flower beds without flowers on the street were divided into pieces, and the cars parked on both sides became empty shells with only iron sheets. Some were even burned into skeletons or smashed by falling signs. Fortunately, there are some shelters' exits, and some intact ambulances and fire vehicles are still left. You can vaguely see traces of people's activities inside. This fire that has spread throughout the city has never really completely extinct humans hiding in underground shelters. Suwu controlled the drone formation and circled silently over the city for a while. Returned silently again. The next day, the network that could have been connected intermittently was completely disconnected, and the refuge where Suwu was located became an isolated island in information. This is not that the environment has become worse, but that the signal towers in the area where the shelter have exhausted backup power. Network connections are no longer supported. But there is no network, and there is still broadcast. Suwu is struggling on the console and soon received a broadcast sent by the nearby officials. The news I got was more than yesterday. In yesterday's fire, the official shelter in Zhonghe City suffered much less losses than expected. There were almost no casualties, only some materials were burned down by the fire. On the contrary, some enterprises and individual shelters have an astonishing mortality rate because of the construction standards and insufficient preparation of emergency equipment. Especially the few private shelters in the area where the fire is the worst. Almost all the fires were burned through the fire from the inside out, and no one survived. In addition, the power plant located on the surface was burned and there was a lack of repair and spare equipment. The public electricity in Zhonghe City has basically been suspended. At least in the next few days, the various shelters in Zhonghe City can only find ways to generate electricity by themselves. The water, electricity, the network are all out of the way. I guess there are many people who are not having a good time in the coming days. Suwu felt pitiful for the small and medium-sized refuges around Zhonghe City. Not every refuge can achieve almost complete self-sufficiency like Suwu. Without the support of urban public facilities, it is necessary to carefully consider and calculate whether it is possible to light a light bulb or drink a sip of water. Life is expected to be quite difficult. However, to be honest, these things have little to do with Su Wu. He is just an ordinary person without power. It's not his turn to worry about the fate of others for the time being. After listening to the official radio, Su Wu, who had nothing to do, left the control center and came to the entertainment room in the living area. While turning on the TV to play a video recording natural scenery, I started exercising on the treadmill. In the end of the world, the most important thing is to have a healthy body. If conditions permit, Su Wu will try to take a certain amount of time every day to exercise. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. More than an hour later, after running 8 kilometers, Su Wu walked off the treadmill with sweat drippingly. After taking a shower, Su Wu brought out a plate of cut fruit and poured a cup of frozen cola with bubbles. He shrank onto the sofa, picked up a handle and started playing games. Immerse yourself in the magnificent and gorgeous world of standalone games, and time passes very quickly. Before I knew it, the day passed like this. The next day, Su Wu read the novel for a long time and watched the short video for a long time. Novels and videos are stocks downloaded from the internet by primary artificial intelligence before the internet was cut off. The content is so much, it is enough to watch it continuously for several years without any repetition. The only thing that makes people feel a little regretful is that those works that were not completed before the internet was disconnected may never be seen in the follow-up. Day 3. While listening to the song, Su Wu discovered that the best cover song actually came from a netizen named Chen Xin whom he had never met. This made him feel unsatisfied and couldn't help but want to hear more. It's a pity that the network has been interrupted and there is nowhere to be found. That night. System settlement. Current territory. Livable personal sanctuary, 0%, fixed daily survival point +3. Close black lens bracket. Listen to the master song Fairy Tale on the pillow, the spirit is weakly healed, and the survival point is +2. Close black lens bracket. Current remaining survival points, 67. Close black lens bracket. There is a reward for listening to music. Su Wu was shocked. These days, I have nothing to do because I am staying in the shelter. Every night, there are basically only 3 guaranteed survival points. He always thought that this was the underlying rules of the system and could not be changed. As a result, I suddenly told him that there is another way to obtain it. Living, song, spiritual healing. Is it the reason why songs will increase the livability of shelters? General Su Wu's eyes fell on several keywords in the prompt, and his eyes became a little deeper. Opening parenthesis. Chapter 22 Breeding Factory. June 22. The flames had basically subsided on the mountain that the refuge could directly observe. But the clouds that enveloped the sky not only did not dissipate, but became more and more drooping and heavier. Even when the sun is at its peak at noon, it is as dark as if it is coming to the evening. The only good news is that the temperature outside is no longer rising wildly. It has always been maintained between 62 degrees and 65 degrees, and has entered a relatively stable period. It was also on this day. With Su Wu's use of the survival point, the construction waste paved on the ground was upgraded to a standard concrete layer that integrates. The excavation work on the 3 underground floors of the entire refuge has been officially completed. The 3rd floor of the refuge underground. Let's name it a breeding factory. Cool temperature control center. Through the huge screen on the console, staring at the 3D map of the refuge drawn in real time by artificial intelligence. Su Wu felt a sense of accomplishment in his heart that he witnessed the seedlings planted with his own hands and were growing vigorously. His refuge has become more and more perfect. Enjoy the brand new shelter map for a while. Su Wu operated the mouse, opened a document that had been completed long ago, and transmitted the design diagrams inside to artificial intelligence. Add the next phase of the work tasks to it. The 3rd layer added. It will focus on breeding and will be responsible for producing 3 types of meat products and egg products, which are relatively easy to breed, namely chicken, duck and fish. This plan seems simple. In fact, the cumbersomeness of the various processes inside is the most sanctuary in the entire shelter. Because it is almost equivalent to recreating a closed small ecosystem. From feed cultivation, temperature and light regulation, to breeding of chickens, ducks and fish, feeding and epidemic prevention, every link is closely related to each other. Any error in any link may lead to a complete shutdown and collapse of the entire factory. It even affects other areas of the shelter. Breeding rooms, chicken coops, duck coops, fish ponds, and slaughtering production lines. Su Wu's vision swept through the design drawings one by one on the buildings separated by cement walls. These occupies the most important part of the breeding plant. Except for the fish pond with a space of 100 square meters, all the remaining buildings, including the house area that can accommodate up to 2,500 chickens and ducks, add up to the same. Only 100 square meters. The remaining 500 square meters of space are all used to place soilless cultivation equipment similar to shelves, and are responsible for planting feed with large yields and short growth cycles such as barley seedlings used by chickens and ducks. Judging from the area occupied alone, compared with the hydroponic farm on the first floor of the refuge, the breeding factory on the third floor is more like a special place for farming. And this is also helpless. When feed cannot be purchased from the outside world, only by building such a huge planting area can we meet the normal operation of the entire breeding plant. There are no living animals of chickens, ducks and fish at the moment, and we need to wait for it to purchase from other shelters in the future. There is no need to rush to transform the third floor. Just transfer the engineering robot in the mechanical manufacturing center and the construction robot that acts as a security guard to slowly build it. Original engineering team. We can continue to start digging the fourth underground floor. The renovation of the breeding factory is cumbersome. However, with design drawings and artificial intelligence, there are almost no real places that Su Wu needs to worry about. After the final check of the design drawings out of caution, Su Wu skipped his attention to the third floor and began to ask the engineering team to dig the fourth underground floor. It's not wrong to work hard to scale down the shelter. Night. The network shows signs of recovery. Su Wu can receive some messages from the outside world intermittently through the internet. At this time, a large number of official personnel ventured out of the underground shelter and carried out emergency maintenance for some important facilities and key transportation channels. Some private and corporate shelters in danger. You can even get official rescue, including and not limited to overall transfer to official shelters, supporting a certain amount of clean water, first aid medicines, etc. However, the power supply in Zhonghe City's urban area is still in a state of interruption. And in the foreseeable future, there will be no possibility of recovery. Electricity has become one of the most precious resources among all shelters. After initially collecting some information, Su Wu began to try to contact others. In the chat software, in the Doomsday group for ordinary people, almost all members' avatars are gray. However, most of the people were online at this time in the small group composed of some local private shelters in Zhonghe City. And the communication is very active. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. Brother Su is online. Is the situation there okay? Seeing Su Wu emerging in the group, Wang Jiangguo, the director of the Iron Sanctuary who was most familiar with him, greeted him. Fortunately, I'm in the suburbs and the shelter is surrounded by gravel beaches. There are basically no dangers. Su Wu replied in typing. To be safe, the area of his farmyard is definitely one of the safest places near Zhonghe City. Far away from the river, the terrain is high and empty, and except for a few abandoned rural self-built houses, there are almost no combustible gravel. If you don't consider the toxic gases brought by the fire, let alone his refuge with black technology, even ordinary people can rest assured to pass through it even if they dig a vegetable cellar. You're still lucky. It's a pity that Lao Li and the others are, and the shelter is built in the mountains. I was stuffed by the fire and poisonous gas for several days. It is said that when the official rescue team rushed over, no living person was found. Wang Jiangguo sighed, with a little sigh in his words. The old Li he mentioned is also a rich man in the group. It is said that an air raid shelter covering an area of more than 5,000 square meters was purchased in the mountains as the main body of the shelter, and more than 1 billion yuan was invested in the transformation. In terms of configuration and luxury, they are among the top ranks in the entire group. It's a pity that fate is impermanent. This rich man who should theoretically survive the longest and most nourishing world, has not even survived the first wave of disasters after the beginning of the Doomsday. Luck is so bad. Su Wu was silent when he saw it, and his heart felt once again gleeful. You know, the shelter he once thought was the most ideal address, also an air raid shelter in the mountains. It was just because I had no money and no channels to buy that I had to give up. Now it seems that being poor is not necessarily a bad thing. Brother, how are you doing there? I remember that the terrain on your side is also pretty good. What's the use of a good terrain? The fire still spread to the windbreak forest outside the factory, and it also burned several factories. In addition, I have not prepared to prevent poison gas. More than 100 people were knocked down at once. Chapter 23 The Official Order. Wang Jianguo sighed. His steel shelter is not big or small. They are basically composed of workers and families of the original steel factory. Total of 2,000 people. In the past, it was somewhat of a small town. By the way, I remember you once said that your shelter uses a geothermal generator. Is that thing useful? Good. The stable supply of 300 kilowatt-hours of electricity is enough to support the operation of the entire shelter. This is not a secret, Su Wu answered quite readily. His geothermal generators and even design drawings are found online for free. Although it has been upgraded to the survival point later, it has certain black technology elements. But the basic principles are at most just advances in craftsmanship. Not to mention it is exposed, even if it is sold openly as a product. Outsiders also praise the advanced technology at most and will not find anything surprising. So much. 300 kWh of power generation. It's almost worth a small hydropower station of a large scale. Su Wu's answer not only amazes Wang Jianguo, but also makes the others in the group unable to help but watch. Although small hydropower stations are inconspicuous, their power generation has been a considerable asset in peacetime. Now, if you save some money, it will be enough to maintain the basic living needs of hundreds of small and medium-sized shelters and tens of thousands of people. It belongs to the current period and is the most typical symbol of the local tyrant. Can you buy some electricity from you? My sanctuary is almost unable to afford lighting now, and there is no electricity everywhere. A group member, the owner of the shelter named Heavy Night, couldn't help but ask. His shelter, like Su Wu, is a small private refuge. It was not big, and he lived in the entire shelter himself and his family. And small scale means low error tolerance. With the only diesel generator in the shelter malfunctioning last night, his shelter was forced into a state of power shortage. Fortunately, the air quality outside is still good now, and a lot of the poisonous gas produced by combustion has long dissipated. Otherwise, he would have to take his family to the official shelter. It's okay to arrive. But I'm very far away from you, so it's impossible to just pull the wire over. Su Wu's current shelter can't even use up half of the power generation of the geothermal generator under normal conditions. A lot of excess electricity is wasted every day. If it can be used to exchange for something else, it would be better. But in the end of the world, the most difficult part in resource exchange is not the resource itself, but the exchange process. If this problem is not solved, the so-called transaction is nothing more than empty talk. It doesn't matter. I have a lot of battery packs here, as long as I can charge the battery. The reinstalled knight replied in a hurry. With the power emergency in the battery pack, it is almost enough to repair the generator. As for how to send the battery pack to Su Wu, he could only bet on the risk himself, braved the heat and the extremely hot storm that could come at any time, and drove over in person. Okay. Let's have a private chat later. Su Wu noticed more business opportunities from the words of the heavy-armed knight. For the recharge knight, carrying a battery pack back and forth requires risking his life. But if it is changed to him, it doesn't work. There are automatic, unmanned medium-sized trucks and construction robots in hand, and the medium-sized trucks still burn electricity instead of gasoline. As long as it is in the area around Zhonghe City, the cost of delivery is almost equal to zero. The difference between this is enough to make him earn another generous shipping fee. A deal with the reload knight. Next, Su Wu never received any request for a transaction again. Although many people in the group were also jealous of Su Wu's abundant electricity. But after all, they are not as good as the reinstalled knight, with a large number of batteries that can store electricity, and their situation is not yet at the end of their lives. Just for some electricity that will not affect basic survival, it is far from worth their big fight to go for a special transaction. In the Doomsday, the greatest survival is. Everything else has to make way for this. I spent more than half an hour chatting in the group. After gaining a lot of useful and useless information and gossip, Suwu was about to quit and play the game for a while, when a somewhat unfamiliar group member Yi Luoxuang was sent him a private chat. As the geothermal generators you have for sale. You want to buy it? Suwu raised his eyebrows and became interested in his heart. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. The geothermal generator is of the same specification as that of a big guy in a small hydropower station. Although the size of the living point is not large. But in terms of value, one thing is to say, even if there is a steel shelter with 2,000 people, it is not necessarily possible to buy it if it is sold out. I have consulted the database. In recent years, all relevant manufacturers and second-hand equipment circulating on the market do not have geothermal generators of your type. You should have the original design drawings for this kind of generator in your hand. If possible, not only the finished product, but also the drawings. Yi Luoxuang was said sincerely. Even the drawings. Suwu was a little surprised to see it. This requirement is not ordinary. If you want a drawing, it means that the opponent is confident that he can copy it completely. That is, retaining the minimum machining capability and a large number of engineers. An ordinary refuge, even if its owner was once a billionaire, could not afford such a professional team. The finished product can be sold. If you want the drawings, it's useless if you ask for them. There are many core parts in it, and even before the end of the world, few companies can produce them. After thinking for a moment, Suwu chose to refuse to sell the drawings. His geothermal generator drawings were originally public versions found on the internet. If there is no completion of the survival point in the future, even if it is strictly copied one-to-one according to the drawings, it will not meet the standards of a small hydropower station. Selling the drawings to the other party is no different from making enemies. It's okay to sell finished products. I booked 2 units and needed to install them. If it was transported, if it was inconvenient for you, I could send a fleet to assist. The leaves fall and frost are not entangled, and they place the order directly and neatly. He actually didn't really like the drawings. It is not a particularly high-end equipment. As long as you have finished products in hand, it is not much more difficult to replicate. I proposed to purchase because I still needed Suwu's installation service. It is not difficult to manufacture a geothermal generator itself, but during the installation process, it is not possible for any construction team to hit the pipes 10 kilometers deep underground and truly absorb geothermal resources. How do you say the price? Looking at Yi Luoxuang's attitude, she almost put the word, not short of money, on her face. Suwu was in spirit. I had a vague feeling that I seemed to have encountered an opportunity to take off. Chapter 24 Material Mall. If the price is, why not calculate it based on the market price 7 months ago? A group of geothermal generators that can generate 300 kilowatt-hours of electricity will have a factory price of around 2.5 million. Considering that your generator is more advanced and the difficulty of installation, you can get a price of 3,500,000 yuan. You can use this quota of 3.5 million to exchange the corresponding materials with us according to the market price 7 months ago. Such as cement, gasoline, diesel, medicines, food, etc. Yi Luoxuang was sent a lot of messages in one breath. From those contents, it seems that he has a mature trading method for doomsday environments. 7 months ago, Suwu first noticed this particular time. He recalled carefully and did not notice that something special happened at that time. However, since Yi Luoxuang emphasized this date, it is obvious that it must be a landmark time node. After thinking about it for a while, Suwu suddenly asked. Did you realize 7 months ago that the end of the world is coming? You do not know. The leaves fall. Frost seemed a little shocked. He paused before continuing to type. It's no secret. The Federal Academy of Sciences did confirm that there would be 2 extreme climates, such as hot and cold waves, 7 months ago. It's just for social stability, not made public to ordinary people. Yi Luoxuang's statement is underestimated, but behind the light and fluttering sentence is not disclosed to ordinary people. There are hundreds of millions of people displaced and destroyed along the coasts of several continents around the world. If they had known the news earlier, even if they were not able to build a shelter on their own, They could have avoided the dangerous coastal areas early and settled inland calmly, just like Su Wu. You won't run away in a hurry when things are about to happen. The savings of half a lifetime will turn into ashes, and you can't even escape. You can only sleep in the depths of the cold sea water. Su Wu's lips moved, but in the end he only turned into a sigh. Strictly speaking, although the channels for obtaining information are different. But he is also a beneficiary of keeping secrets. All his startup funds for building the shelter came from selling real estate in coastal cities. Not qualified to blame others. Give me a price list from 7 months ago. If the problem is not big, just sell at this price. Su Wu suddenly lost the intention of bargaining. Of course, this is also related to the fair offer of Yi Luoshuhua. To be scarce, all supplies in the Doomsday are scarce items. Although it is impossible to exchange materials in normal periods of prices, it is better to argue with each other and hoard for reference. Good. Ask me directly if you have any questions, it's better to make a decision by tomorrow morning. Many of our places are seriously lacking in electricity, waiting for your generator to rescue. Yi Luoshuang was sent 2 documents. After Su Wu received it, click to check it. One was found to be a price list, and the other was a purchase limit quantity and price adjustment instructions. This is normal. Although overall, it was exchanged according to the market price 7 months ago. But some things, such as living poultry, pigs, cattle, and sheep, are much more expensive to maintain in shelters than in peacetime. This is somewhat inappropriate when calculated at the original price. At the same time, the supplies in a shelter are limited, and it is impossible to take out all the supplies for exchange. The so-called limit on the quantity and type of purchase is actually equivalent to the quantity of goods that can be placed on the shelves. In essence, it is barter. Of course, although there are the above seemingly complicated conditions and restrictions, the actual price given in the document is still quite sincere. Basically, the price of live poultry is only about 3 times higher than that of normal periods. The price of drugs is not much different from that of normal pharmacies. The price of cement is as low as 20 yuan per bag, which is almost the same as the ex-factory price. There are also sugar, salt, wine, oil, etc., and the prices are also quite low. And the amount available for purchase is huge. Is this the official inventory? It's amazing. After glanced at the prices and inventory lists, Su Wu was extremely jealous. I didn't know what words to use to describe my feelings for a while. Compared to when he bought dozens of kilograms of sugar, he was warned at home. The amount of sugar that can be purchased in this document is calculated in tons. There are so many that seem to be endless. It took more than half an hour to carefully browse the price list from beginning to end several times. Su Wu had a judgment in his mind. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. Yi Luoshuang didn't have any idea of cheating him. This transaction was not only feasible, but the profit was much higher than the excavator he planned to sell before. It is a rare opportunity. I'll finish this deal tomorrow. 2 geothermal generators, a total of 7 million yuan of supplies. After all, they should be able to catch up with the wealthiest batch of small refuges in Zhonghe City. While planning, Su Wu added new tasks to the engineering robots in the machinery manufacturing center. Let it pause the renovation of the 3 underground floors and first create 2 geothermal generator models. Upgrading 2 geothermal generators requires 26 survival points. The amount is not small. But for Su Wu at present, he is barely within the scope of his tolerance. The supplies exchanged for them are enough to expand the scale of the shelter exponentially. At least it is not worthy of its name at present. The mechanical manufacturing center with only 1 engineering robot and an empty underground 3-story aquaculture factory can be truly built. I contacted Yi Luoshuang again and discussed some details. Agree on the delivery time and location. Su Wu stretched and felt a little tired. Seeing that it was getting late, he got up and went to the living area to take a shower. I plan to have a good sleep and take good care of tomorrow's tasks. A night passed quietly. The next morning, Su Wu wakes up in the morning light emitted by the bedroom ceiling simulation. He sat up and was stunned for a moment. Wait until the remaining sleepiness dissipates. Then I reached out to pick up the tablet at the head of the bed and check the logs of the shelter. The log shows that there are still 3 full hours left before the second geothermal generator model is completed. I got up a little early. Su Wu yawned, thought about it, but continued to sleep without falling back. He used his tablet computer to issue instructions to artificial intelligence remotely. Let it manipulate a construction robot out and drive a medium-sized van parked on the ground to the shelter of the heavy night. There were too many things yesterday, and I almost forgot the charging transaction with reinstall night. Now, while the time is still good, I will just solve this problem first. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 25 The Tyrant Who Built His Own Shelter. Outside the shelter. The sky is still shrouded in low black clouds, with extremely low visibility. The ground on both sides of the road is covered with gray-white embers. It can be seen from the site, giving people a sense of loneliness in the silence of all things. Even the sound of the wind seemed to disappear from here. Click. Accompanied by a sound of mechanical friction. A robot with a thick skeleton slowly walked out of the tilted upward passage. Enter this dark and hot world. It stood on the ground, turned its eyes with high-definition camera and night vision on its head, and quickly transmitted the surrounding environmental images into the intelligent core of the body. Then within a few milliseconds, the smart core reacted. Draw a simplest set of action routes. Go forward, bypass a hill of discarded steel, enter the temporary carport, and then board the cab of the medium-sized truck parked in the carport. At the same time, the second floor of the shelter, control center. On the unattended console, the monitor lights up automatically. Artificial intelligence Luo Tianyi faithfully refreshes every task information on the screen. The construction robot A04 is entering the lift platform, leaving the shelter, entering the truck cab. The surrounding environment is safe. Start planning the driving route, destination, reinstalling night refuge. When Su Wu finally got up from the bed. After a simple washing and a very hearty breakfast. When he arrived at the control center, he found that the medium-sized truck was about to arrive at the doorstep of the heavy-loaded night. Hey, I'm here. Is it convenient for you to go out now? Su Wu switched to the chat software and sent a voice chat application to the reinstalled night. A few seconds later. Connected opposite. Give me half a minute, and I'll go up and open the door. The reload knight's answer is concise and powerful. And while he was speaking, he could hear a burst of rapid footsteps. Apparently he was running towards the exit while talking. Then I'll wait for you. Su Wu is very satisfied with the rigid and neat style of the heavy-armed knight. He waited patiently for a while, and soon through the onboard camera, he saw a shop with no sign on the street, and the closed rolling gate opened upwards. A forklift with a packed cargo drove out of it. Here. Su Wu honked the horn and controlled the construction robot to jump out of the cab. You are Su Wu. On the forklift, a middle-aged man looked at the robot coming towards him in surprise. Judging from the exposed skeleton of the robot, it doesn't look like someone is hiding inside. This is a remote-controlled robot, and I am still in a shelter. Su Wu explained briefly. He also operated the construction robot to help load the goods from the forklift to the truck compartment. The temperature in the air is now as high as 65 degrees. Every time a person is exposed to outside for one more second, he will have an additional risk of heat stroke. It's really not suitable to stop and talk slowly. Damn, I've started playing with robots. That's so awesome. Just after he came out, the heavy knight was already soaked in sweat. But he didn't care about his stuffiness and discomfort. Instead, he kept looking at the construction robot like a child seeing his favorite toy. There is an unconcealed envy in my eyes. This is the first time he has seen such a flexible robot in reality. Is that all the batteries to be charged? Su Wu considers the importance of the knight who has not yet returned, so he simply asks the construction robot to point his hand and signal the knight to enter the truck cab with him. The tram has been renovated as a survival point. The cab of the medium-sized truck is equipped with high-quality air conditioners, which can operate normally under high temperatures. Of course, because the temperature difference is too large, no special temperature insulation materials are used. The environment inside the cab can never be as cool as the inside of the shelter. At most, it is better to be exposed to the outside world. Thank you. The heavy-mounted knight was not polite, and jumped off the forklift neatly and rushed to the passenger seat of the truck in a few steps. The cool breeze in the car blew on his forehead, causing him to breathe a long breath, revealing his expression of surviving the disaster. The high temperature outside is over 60 degrees, which is almost the same as torture. That's all the batteries. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. And I put the rewards in there too. A total of 20 kilograms of smokeless gunpowder are all high-quality products with quality comparable to military use. This is a trade item that was negotiated last night. Originally, according to the original idea of the reload knight, he wanted to use a imitation military pistol and a few boxes of bullets as charging and transportation rewards. However, Suwu considers that the firearm structure is not complicated, his own engineering robot can also be manufactured. I rejected this proposal and replaced it with a more cost-effective gunpowder raw material. How powerful? Suwu asked curiously. As an ordinary person born in a peaceful era, military gunpowder has some unknown and mysterious to him. If you use it well, you might be able to collapse a building. The effect is absolutely explosive. The heavy-armed knight described it with a slightly exaggerated expression, and then his tone changed. But gunpowder of this quality is a waste of purely being used as a bomb. It is best to use it to make bullets, and the finished product is both stable and reliable. Suwu nodded when he heard this. In fact, there is no need to remind the knight that he had previously pointed out that the purpose of trading smokeless gunpowder was to make ammunition by himself. Brother is very familiar with these things. He used to be in the military industry. No way, you look down on me too highly. I'm just a who relies on collecting rent for a few buildings at home. It's purely idle to know this. The heavy-dressed knight shook his head and pointed to several 6- or 7-story residential buildings facing the street outside the cab window, with a bit of nostalgia and melancholy expression. This, and this are all our houses. When I was collecting rent, I was disgusted with the trouble and asked households to knock on the door and deal with all kinds of people. It seems that it would be great if that kind of lively day would last. It took only 10 days to move into the underground shelter. The heavy-mounted knight has already tasted the taste of loneliness. Especially in the days when the network was disconnected, it was more like entering an isolated island abandoned by the world. The discomfort almost made him suffocate. Several buildings. Suwu didn't know what to say for a moment. You know, the startup capital he started to build the shelter only came from a house of more than 100 square meters. If there was no such a sudden end of the world, perhaps Suwu will never reach the asset level of a heavy-mounted knight in his entire life. There is indeed no simpler for these people who can build refuges on their own. Chapter 26 The First Automatic Rifle. Back from the reinstalled knight's sanctuary, the engineering robot has almost completed the model of the geothermal generator. Suwu thought for a while and did not rush to contact Yi Luoxuanghua. He directed the construction robot to remove the battery pack of the heavy knight, and then transported the 20 kilograms of smokeless gunpowder to the machinery manufacturing center. A new manufacturing mission is added, Assault Rifle X1, with 500 rounds of 7.62 mm bullets. After replenishing the most critical gunpowder raw materials. With engineering robots, as well as a mechanical manufacturing center with plenty of metal, it has the ability to produce real military firearms and ammunition. Considering the subsequent demand for escorting materials, Suwu finally chose to build a fully automatic assault rifle. The total value of this transaction with the official is as high as 7 million. For any individual, even small and medium-sized shelters, it is a huge wealth that cannot be ignored. It's hard to say that no one will take the risk and rob the robbery halfway. Assault rifle is the last insurance. But I hope I won't use it. The manufacturing process of firearms is not complicated. More than half an hour later, Suwu got a brand new assault rifle and 2 boxes of 100 bullets. Didn't wait for the remaining ammunition to go offline. Suwu was operating a construction robot, holding a rifle and 2 boxes of bullets to go to the ground for a simple test. After confirming that the performance is okay, they are placed in the truck's cab. Then drive the truck in reverse to the door of the basement floor of the shelter, preparing to ship the upgraded geothermal generator. At this time, another difficult question was placed in front of him. After installing a geothermal generator in the carriage of a medium-sized truck, the remaining space is no longer enough and the other one is put down. Upgrade the van. After considering it, Suwu chose the simplest and most direct method. Smash the survival point. Upgrade the medium-sized truck to a large truck, and at the same time add an additional attribute of temperature insulation to it. The temperature in the future will become more extreme. Trading between shelters will not be interrupted easily. It can also benefit early to transform the transportation vehicle into place at one time. The upgraded large truck has a load capacity of 20 tons. The body size was a whole circle and the carriage became longer. It parked at the gate outside the lifting platform on the first floor of the shelter, blocking the exit passage that was obliquely upward. It's almost a little short and can no longer pass through the passage. After several construction robots were installed in the carriage, the large truck emitted a low sound that symbolized activation, and automatically slowly drove from the passage to the ground under unmanned control. Set off. Destination, North District, Zhonghe City, Refuge No. 9. The second floor of the refuge. Back to the control center, Suwu opened the electronic map, located the address given by Yi Luoxuanghua, and sent a dispatch command to the large truck that was ready to go. Under the dim sky, the quiet rocky beach area in the suburbs was once again illuminated by dazzling high beams. The huge steel truck dragged the same large drilling machine, crushing the ashes and dust piled up on the road like snow. Moving silently towards the distant city. Half an hour later, the truck passed through a ruin burned by the fire and stopped in front of a subway station. Several young men and women in military uniforms were waiting there early to meet them. The leaves fall from frost. Suwu controlled the construction robot sitting in the driver's seat and jumped out of the car and greeted the young woman who was quite heroic in the lead. It's me. The real name is Yi Shi. Yi Shi nodded with a smile. She looked at the tough appearance of the construction robot, with a slightly regretful expression. I thought I could see myself, but I didn't expect that what I came was a robot. Just be able to work. Suwu didn't care. His gaze swept across Yi Shi and his friends' waists, and he noticed that they were all carrying a portable cooling device similar to a waist bag. This thing cannot be said to be useless, but judging from the fine sweat still oozing on their foreheads, the effect is obviously not so satisfactory. You guys go in and wait a while, I'll move the goods down. Don't you need help? No need. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. Suwu's tone was careless. This time, 2 construction robots came with the car, and the geothermal generator and drilling machine were equipped with movable universal wheels. Without help from others, you can easily bring all these equipment into the shelter. The only thing to worry about is whether there is enough space inside the official shelter to accommodate the behemoth like a driller. Okay, thank you for your hard work. Yi Shi did not persist. To be honest, she doesn't want to stay outside either. In such a high-temperature environment as the ground, it is already very uncomfortable to just stand, and it is impossible to put in less effort. But before she left, she seemed to remember something. Report a string of passwords to Suwu. Oh, by the way, this is the wireless password for our shelter. Please pay attention to switching. Otherwise, you may not be able to contact your robot when you get underground. Suwu raised his eyebrows slightly and was a little surprised. Don't you have a direct internet connection in your shelter? This is actually very important to him. Even large trucks modified through survival points have a much higher distance to receive and send signals than drones and robots, but in terms of communication methods, they still have not escaped from the radio range. It is not that obvious when it is on the surface, but once it penetrates deep into the ground and is covered by thick rock layers, communication is not so easy to use. At this time, it is necessary to use the internet to control his construction robot. There are too many people, and only the management and a few external liaison specialists will activate the permissions. But there is also a dedicated internet inside the shelter. It's okay to call each other in the shelter, check the announcements, and download some public information. Yi Shi explained. A wisp of sweat happened to fall into her eyes at this moment. She reached out to wipe it away with disgust, and then turned around and walked towards the depths of the subway station with a little anxiousness. That's all for now, let's wait for you. Okay. Suwu responded. He looked at Yi Shi leaving thoughtfully and labeled her as a spoiled rich girl. It's fine in normal times, but if you can still have such a casual attitude when working in the military of Doomsday, it can only be said that your family background is very unusual. But it has nothing to do with him. After thinking about it for a moment, he threw it behind him. Leave the unloading work to artificial intelligence to direct. Suwoo took advantage of his free time and got up and poured himself a glass of iced Coke. The cold drink with bubbles poured into his mouth, which made him feel refreshed. After seeing enough of the quiet and hot environment outside, even if you stay in the control hall with central air conditioning, the temperature will always be kept in the control hall like the light rain in spring, and you will inevitably feel a little depression and discomfort. Suwoo needs to divert his attention to relieve his emotions. Chapter 27 Deep Refuge. I took a short break for more than 10 minutes. Outside the urban subway station. With the unremitting efforts of construction robots, 2 geothermal generators and a drilling machine were finally transferred to the official shelter along the temporary wooden track. The heavy iron doors of the official shelter were completely closed. Suwoo, who was far away in the control center, saw a moment of stuttering on the operation screen, and then he returned to the same as before. This phenomenon represents the communication between Suwoo and the construction robot, and adds a link of transit from the internal network of the official shelter. The speed is okay, it doesn't matter. There are still many people's communications, which seem to have been restored. Suwoo was manipulating a construction robot and looked around in the corridor of the shelter. The smooth picture feedback made him quite satisfied. With this network transmission speed, it will not affect the subsequent communication and work with official personnel at all. In addition, he also found that in this small intranet of the official shelter, he could log into the chat software. There are many people who have lost contact in the outside world. Among them, Chen Xin was also among the ones who were particularly concerned about. When I'm free, I must talk to her. Reminiscing the past is not the purpose, the key is to get all the cover songs she has recorded. A few days ago, because of Chen Xin's fairy tale on his pillow, Suwoo received 2 additional survival points rewards. Although no matter how the replica is replicated, similar rewards will no longer be triggered. But Chen Xin's specialness was firmly remembered by Suwoo. Now that he has the opportunity to contact, he has to try it whether it is useful or not. Walking in the corridor for a while. A hall appears at the end of the corridor. The noisy voices came in waves with the roar of the machine running. Next to the construction robot, Yi Zai's voice, who was talking to Suwoo, became a little distorted. Suwoo adjusts the focal length in the lens. Soon, on one wall of the hall, I saw a row of clear signs. Zhonghe City No. 9 Sanctuary, 055 Construction Area. Closing square bracket. How come there is a construction site here? Suwoo was a little strange. Judging from the slogan numbering, this kind of construction is not a partial small fuss. It is likely to affect the super project of all official shelters in the entire city. This is one of the logistics sites to dig deep shelters. Responsible for cutting boards, mixing concrete and other foundation processes. Yi Shi stopped and avoided a passing forklift. Then he raised his hand and pointed to a lift in the corner of the hall, explaining carefully. The output of the hall will be transported through that lift to the construction site located 270 meters deep underground. Used to support them in opening up new shelter spaces. Suwoo followed Yi Zai's finger and looked at the open-air lifting platform deep in the ground, which was carrying a truck of mixed cement. I vaguely peeked out some tricks. Reopen the shelter in such a deep place. Is this to resist future disasters? That's right. According to the latest conclusions from the Academy of Sciences, the surface climate may be far more extreme in the future than previously speculated. The average temperature will rise above 100 degrees. Yi Shi nodded and was not stingy with sharing some confidential information with Suwoo. Only by opening up new living space underground deep enough, we can survive this doomsday disaster with the lowest energy consumption. It seems that I have to prepare in advance, too. Suwoo pondered, with a thoughtful expression. Compared to the official shelter, his own shelter was only built at a location 10 meters deep underground. At most it is slightly better than the cellars dug by some farmers themselves or the underground parking lots in old communities. When it comes to the ability to resist accidental risks, no matter how hard it is not built in a deep shelter more than 200 meters underground, stable and reliable. However, with the blessing of a survival point, his refuge is not useless. At least that 1-meter thick concrete wall, as well as the world's top central air conditioning and air circulation system, all surpass most ordinary shelters. It is unlikely to encounter any danger in a short period of time. You shouldn't have a big problem. Make good use of the 7 million materials quota in this transaction is enough to create a safe private fortress. Speaking of this, Yishi inevitably showed a little envious look. 7 million supplies, put into anyone in the shelter now, are enough to raise the living standards of him, even his family and friends, to the level of a world-class wealthy man. It will never be used up no matter how you use it within a few years. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. I hope that's the case. Su Wu did not argue. At this time, no matter what you say, you will be suspected of showing off your wealth, and it is best to be silent. After passing through the hall, I walked a distance in the original subway passage. The two arrived at their destination. I came to a place that looked like a material preparation. Here, an old man in his 50s and 60s and in a good spirit had a work handover with Yishi. Is this the generator cellar you found? It's quite unique. The old man looked at the construction robot controlled by Su Wu, with sharp eyes that were not his age. Hello, my name is Su Wu. Su Wu took a step forward and introduced himself calmly. I'm the power engineer in charge of this shelter, you can call me Li He. Li He nodded, with some vigilance in his attitude of expectation. Young man. You should be right to call you a young man. You are very young when you hear your voice. The geothermal generator has never been installed in our Zhonghe city. With our geothermal resources, can it really reach the 300 kilowatt-hours of electricity you said? As an old worker who has been in the power industry for decades, it is normal for Li He to have such questions. The power generation of 300 kilowatt-hours is not a small amount. If it is really so easy to achieve, the stability, pollution-free and cheap characteristics of geothermal power generation have long been popularized in Zhonghe city. However, in fact, before Su Wu arrived, there was no geothermal power station in Zhonghe city. I'm not sure. Once you're installed, you'll know after testing. Su Wu hesitated for a moment and did not take on a big bag. Such things that have no prior surveys may not be guaranteed even if there is an example of his shelter. Then please. If you have any need, we will do our best to provide what we can. Li He did not get the promise, but he was not upset. He sighed, made way for the way, and introduced Su Wu to his technical team. Chapter 28 Disappointing Official Refuge. Su Wu had a brief conversation with them. The construction plan will be determined soon. Then, Su Wu typed out an instruction on the console and handed over the remaining specific work to artificial intelligence. The installation process for geothermal generators that have been upgraded through the survival point is quite simple. When Su Wu operated it manually, he could also make it look very good. Now it's time to replace artificial intelligence to take charge, so there will be no mistakes. After watching the construction site of the construction robot for a while, Su Wu, who was liberated, switched to other places that could be seen by the surveillance camera and browsed the environment elsewhere through the intranet of the official shelter. Su Wu has long been curious about the official shelter designed by countless professionals. Now is a chance to understand. Number 9 Refuge in Zhonghe City. The main body is composed of 4 subway stations, 2 underground shopping malls, 2 military air raid shelters, thousands of civilian underground parking lots, material warehouses, etc. They are connected to each other by underground passages of varying specifications. Overall, it looks like an underground city with complex route systems and crisscrossing. The permanent population of refuges is about 560,000, which is one of the largest refuges in the entire Zhonghe city. There is a large underground food production plant, 2 small and medium-sized sewage treatment plants built internally, and has relatively abundant electronic spare parts inventory resources. Its main source is the relocation of factories from ground industrial parks. It seems, the official shelter. The environment is not very good. After walking around the surveillance area of the official shelter, Su Wu came to a conclusion with some uncertainty. In addition to being larger, in terms of function and structure, this official shelter is not as perfect as Su Wu himself. Even the most basic food and water are not completely self-sufficient. Some elderly, weak, sick and disabled people who lack the ability to work, and even food rations made by insects and earthworms have not received enough, and have less obvious symptoms of hunger. The facilities in residential areas are even more lacking in maintenance. It only took 10 days to calculate the time for formal large-scale relocation to enter underground shelters. In many places with dense crowds, there have been signs of pipeline breaking and sewage flowing across the board. The living environment is awful. What is awkward to the bad living environment is that almost all refuge residents have to engage in extremely heavy labor. Participate in construction, transportation of materials, breeding, etc. After watching Su Wu, he saw only a few family areas that were obviously middle and high-level sanctuary. He could also see some idle people with leisurely expressions and good life. A little outrageous. The more Su Wu looked at him, the more silent he became. In the end, he didn't even know what to say. He felt as if he had seen an old and weather-beaten refuge that had been struggling in the end of the world for 2 or 3 years, rather than a brand new refuge that had just been put into operation and had basically not been opened for the massive amount of food stored in it. Among them, what impressed him was some elderly people who were hungry and sucked down. There are also some ordinary workers who have suffered accidents and work-related accidents but have to be wailed in pain due to lack of medical treatment. In the end of the world where everyone can't take care of themselves, the vulnerable group, who were originally at the bottom of society, slid into the abyss earlier than others. If there is not much food reserve, it is understandable. But there is obviously no consumption, and the high-rise family areas are even too much food to throw in the trash can. As a bystander, Su Wu clearly saw the division line between the people in the shelter and the management. This is not a natural disaster, but a man-made disaster. Luckily I'm not one of them. Shaking his head, Su Wu could only sigh. The previous longing and envy for the safety and reliability of the official shelter disappeared without a trace. Instead, there is unlimited motivation to build your own shelter. Even if your own refuge is small and lacks materials, you still need to face the terrifying natural disasters outside alone. But at least everything in the shelter belongs to you. He has enough territory and countless opportunities and time to slowly make life better. Just as Su Wu was observing the living status of ordinary people in the official shelter, the matter about Su Wu and the official transaction was handed over to the director of the No. 9 shelter, Ming Runshan's desk. A brightly lit office. Ming Runshan took out the document and his eyes stopped on the title. Trade on purchasing geothermal generators in Heihuangshi Village Refuge. Huangshi Village is where Su Wu's shelter is located. Because Su Wu did not name his shelter, the document was temporarily referred to by the village where he was located. After looking down carefully, Ming Runshan felt a little interested. He looked up and asked the secretary beside him. This kind of geothermal generator is really as reliable as they say. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. Ignoring the terrain and seasonal cycles, steady output is equivalent to electricity from small hydropower stations. As the highest official of the shelter, Ming Runshan's favorite thing is stability. A small hydropower station that can produce stable output is enough to affect all aspects of the shelter. It is second only to the grain factories. The secretary did not dare to neglect and hurriedly recalled the relevant content. He answered carefully. Based on the reported data, this is indeed the case. At present, the seller has transported the generator and is undergoing installation and trial operation in the Material Security Warehouse in District 055. It is expected to be officially put into production tomorrow afternoon. Ming Runshan nodded when he heard this. He stared at the documents and thought of more places. Wildstone Village, I remember, not too far from us. There shouldn't be too worried about the after-sales service. Let's take a look first. Speaking of this, Ming Runshan signed the name on the document. Approved for the sale of materials worth 7 million yuan. The secretary stood respectfully next to him, his head hanging down. Be careful not to disturb your own leaders. He has been following Ming Runshan for 4 or 5 years. It was fine before, but although the status of both sides was high and low, they were essentially not different. However, since Ming Runshan served as the director of Shelter Number 9 and hundreds of thousands of people moved into the shelter, the other party's growing power forced the secretary to become more cautious. I was afraid that if I was not careful, it would attract Ming Runshan's punishment. Because that punishment can really affect the future and destiny of the secretary's family, and even the most basic right to survive. If we want to use a word to describe it, Ming Runshan was equivalent to the ancient vassal princes. If you truly control the power of life and death of all subjects in the territory, no one can stop you even if you act recklessly. Opening parenthesis. Chapter 29 Big Purchase. The next afternoon. Official Shelter No. 9055 Guard Warehouse. Under the rigorous operation of the construction robot, the two geothermal generators were successfully operated and were successfully incorporated into the shelter's power grid. At this time, Su Wu had just finished the call with residents of an official shelter. From her hands, she got a packaged data file. Proficient in receiving and preserving. Su Wu began to add all 29 songs inside to the player on the spot and play them on the spot. The soft female voice immediately dispelled the silence in the control room. It seems to bring people back a summer that is full of vitality and comfort. This song is pretty good. Su Wu was resonated with the singing and felt a little nostalgia in his heart. Calculate the time, it should be the early summer season now. In normal years, there will be ice-sweet watermelons, lush and green leaves, cutting the sunshine and making people fall asleep with the gentle breeze. It's a pity that all this can only become a distant and unremembering dream now. All that was left was doubled, and the high temperature was as high as 60 or 70 degrees. Under such extreme temperatures, all vegetation will wither. It is also superficial fires, droughts that have spread around the world, and mist that is more than 10 kilometers thick in the sky. The entire world, the surface vegetation that still survives may be less than 1% of the original ones. I was ecstatic for a while. Su Wu then noticed that the work of installing the geothermal generator had been completed. Yi Shi sent him a website, an account and password through the internet. Click on, enter your account and password to log in. Su Wu discovered that it was an online mall with dozens of pages of different tradable products displayed. The account comes with a quota of 7 million yuan, which is exactly the same as the income from the sale of geothermal generators this time. It's time to harvest the results. Sit upright. Su Wu was excited and his eyes became serious. The stage of growth of your own refuge depends on this step of choice. After spending a little time, he browsed the entire mall up and down, and Su Wu had a vague plan in his mind. At present, his refuge has been completely built into 3 floors. The first layer of hydroponic farm has achieved the production and supply of rice and vegetables and fruits. The second floor realizes the needs of daily living, water use, small-scale mechanical parts manufacturing and maintenance. The infrastructure of the third layer of breeding factory has been improved, and it is only possible to invest in the cubs of chickens, ducks and fish, as well as a certain amount of initial feed, to continuously supply fresh meat products in the future. In terms of function, the most urgent need at present is to officially operate the breeding factory. The first batch of supplies to buy. 5,000 hatchable eggs, 2,000 hatchable duck eggs, and 2,000 fish fry of different varieties. There are about 5 tons of emergency feed. Compared with the cubs that have been hatched, eggs and duck eggs are cheaper. It takes longer to cultivate to the point where it can be released. But for Su Wu, he can still afford to wait for this time. His shelter warehouse has enough frozen meat products and canned meat. There is no shortage of meat in the short term. Moreover, forage, algae, etc., also take time to grow as a substitute for feed. It matches the breeding starting with eggs in terms of progress. The total price of this batch of materials is about 30,000 yuan. Compared with the million-level shopping quota, it is almost negligible. But it solved the biggest problem Su Wu is currently facing. Then there is a lot of fertilizer. Whether it is a hydroponic farm or a feed planting area of a breeding factory, fertilizer is indispensable. Although Su Wu also had some reserves before. But it is related to the foundation and lifeblood of the refuge's survival, and it is impossible to achieve self-production in the short term. No matter how much it doesn't matter how much it is. In addition, fertilizer can also be used to make weapons and ammunition. Although it may not be possible to use it, it is one thing to use it or not, and whether it is another matter. Many times, this is the boundary that determines life and death. Anyway, I can't let it go. The opportunity is rare, try to get as many as possible. Su Wu made a fuss and directly increased the original 50-ton purchase plan tenfold. The order of 500 tons of fertilizer was smashed and half of the fertilizer inventory in the mall was cleared on the spot. The price he paid for this was that the balance in his account was reduced by 1 million. There is a need to add some building materials next. Mainly cement and steel bars. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. Don't look at the materials used by Su Wu to build shelters, most of them are construction waste and stones at almost zero cost. Just paste a thin layer of cement on the outermost part. But this cannot withstand the continuous consumption. If you don't find a way to add it, relying on the 2 trucks of cement that Su Wu pulled over last time, it can only support the expansion of the shelter to the 5th underground floor at most. That is, it is about 40 meters away from the ground. Such a distance, compared with the official second phase of the shelter project, which is 270 meters deep, is completely insufficient to satisfy Su Wu. But at this time, Su Wu discovered that the official shelter seemed to be not as financially powerful as expected. Although he wanted to buy it, the cement stock in the mall was only 500 tons. Calculated at the price of 20 yuan per bag, even if the mall is empty, you can only buy cement worth 200,000 yuan. It's okay. It's already 10 times more than the last time I bought it. You can't be too greedy. After a little disappointed, Su Wu felt relieved again. Considering the official ongoing second phase of the shelter construction plan, he knew that even if the 500 tons of cement were the official shelter, they might be taken out to support the storefront after scrambling around. Being able to buy is already a profit. However, there is no good news. The other building material reinforcement that Su Wu needs is quite sufficient in the shopping mall. He placed an order and bought 1,000 tons in one go. There are more than 1 million and a million. Look at the account balance, there are still a lot left. There is no point in saving this thing. Maybe one day the policy changes at the shelter will be directly reset to 0. It's better to make it all happen as soon as possible. Consider it a little. Su Wu turned his attention to the white sugar that he had been thinking about before. There are no warnings or purchase restrictions this time, so I have to buy 20 tons to make up for my regrets. Then salt, gasoline and diesel also need 10 tons each. There are also daily necessities, toilet paper, soap, etc. If the timeline is extended to decades, the reserves of these things will be at least 1,000 boxes. In addition, various models of drones, high-end and low-end chips, wires, lamps, etc. must be reserved a little. These are key consumables for the intelligence of refuges. After buying the little things, Su Wu's balance disappeared quickly. In the end, only about 400,000 were left. There should be nothing needed. The rest can be replaced with tobacco, alcohol and medicine. Su Wu doesn't like smoking or drinking. But this did not prevent him from realizing that these things had a huge attraction to certain specific groups. In many cases, tobacco and alcohol can be regarded as common currency. The same goes for medicines. Although it is not addictive, it can be used to save lives and suppress severe pain at critical moments. No human beings who survive in the end of the world will deny the value of drugs. The only thing that is not as good as tobacco and alcohol is that medicines generally have a shelf life. Expired drugs will weaken their effects and may even have a counterproductive effect. Chapter 30 Robbers. Spend the amount in your account and wait until you fill in the delivery address. Su Wu suddenly discovered another problem he had ignored before, and he could not afford the high freight. The total price of 7 million supplies. The transportation cost is 14 million. With doubts, Su Wu sent the freight bill to Yi Shi. I want her to explain why the shipping cost is higher than the price of the goods itself. No way. Your thousands of tons of cargo will take at least a heavy truck transport team for several days. You know the situation outside now. Staying 1 second longer may lead to life danger. The charges are so high, a considerable part of them are compensation for those involved in the insurance. Yi Zai's tone was also a little helpless. In this regard, she really has no intention of cheating Su Wu. It is completely limited by objective conditions that are irresistible. After being embarrassed for a while, Yi Shi suddenly felt blessed and found a compromise. Don't you have a transport truck? It's still a model that can be driven unmanned. The shipping cost shouldn't be too high. Otherwise, we will keep these goods for you for free first. You use that truck to transport it back slowly. Home on your own. Su Wu fell into thinking. This is a solution. Compared to the expensive shipping costs, it is not impossible to transfer your own transportation slowly. That's the process may be a little longer. But considering his shelter, it is not too far from the official shelter. In addition, the upgraded large trucks weigh a full 20 tons. Even if you only use one car to transport it back and forth, the efficiency is barely acceptable. Then do it like that. In just a few words, a large-scale transaction involving many materials came to an end. More than 10 hours later. On the road leading to the suburbs. A large transport vehicle drove by silently. The heavy body crushed the thick dust accumulated in the passing area, leaving two obvious ruts under the illumination of the car's taillights. Roadside. A certain house hidden in the darkness, and his eyes took all this into his eyes. Boss, this is the fourth trip. Every trip is full of loads and comes back empty. There must be something good inside. The thin figure held a telephone and whispered to report. Can you be sure how many people are? After a sizzling electric current sound in the communicator, a slightly vigilant voice came. I can't see clearly the situation in the cab. But it's probably only 1 or 2 people, no more than 3 at most. The cab of that car is not big and can't hold too many people. Wang Feng's younger brother learned how to repair cars for a while before the end of the world and was quite familiar with the structure of the vehicle. Basically, you can find out the internal situation by just one glance. Okay, I'll bring someone up now. Prepare the trap and get a vote when it leaves the city next time. In a basement not far from the house, a strong man with a scar on his face put down the communicator in his hand. He turned his head and looked at the brothers surrounding him and said in a deep voice. Xiaoqi found a good deal. Everything is ready, follow me. Whether you can live a good life in the future depends on this vote. The scarred man named Lu Gaofeng, who was originally a serious prisoner in prison. A few days ago, he took advantage of the opportunity of the prison transfer and the order was turbulent, and he successfully escaped. With his wanted man on his back, he naturally could not go to a serious refuge. With no way out, he could only gather a few people with similar backgrounds as him and join forces to loot a personal shelter with poor protection. And take over the magpie's nest by the way. The shelter that was looted was used as a stronghold. As for the original owner of the shelter and his family, of course they will all be killed. At a time when most of the official forces have been shrinking into shelters, the cost and difficulty of crime have dropped significantly compared to the past. If it weren't for the harsh natural environment and the lack of supplies, it would be a paradise for people like Lu Gaofeng. Brother, do you want to bring explosives? I can even blow up the armored vehicles. It will definitely work well when used on ambush. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. Next to Lu Gaofeng, a gentle young man pushed the glasses on his face and actively asked for a fight. As a person who is relatively not good at force, young people really want to show their useful side. And explosives are the most proud technology in his hands. Okay, bring them all. The car can be blown up, we only need the goods on the car. Lu Gaofeng thought for a moment and waved his hand decisively. Don't look at his rough face, but in fact, his mind is extremely delicate. Otherwise, he will be the leader of an unstable group of desperate people. At this time, there is no one who can continue to transport huge materials back and forth. Even if you seem to be alone, it is difficult to guarantee that there will be no security personnel carrying guns and thermal weapons hidden inside. Since you have decided to grab it, you can't have the idea of keeping your hands. It is best to kill them in one blow and not leave them a chance to struggle. A group of 7 or 8 bandits carried swords, guns, sticks, homemade earth guns and explosives. In addition, each person carries a bucket of ice. One by one, they walked out of the hiding refuge and rushed to find good ambush place. Several hours passed. When a large truck was loaded with supplies, it drove from the city to the suburbs again and passed by a house near a house. A violent explosion suddenly appeared like thunder, pushing the large truck driving at high speed away from its original route and crashing into the house on the side of the road. Brothers, follow me. Lu Gaofeng threw away the cigarette in his mouth, carried a dirt gun, and walked out of the hiding place first and touched the truck that crashed into the house. But as the distance narrows and the explosion of smoke gradually dissipates. But a bad feeling gradually arose in his heart, and his eyes twitched. That truck looked so complete. Not only is the car body not twisted and deformed, but even the tires that should have been hit the most, and the most fragile glass, basically have no damage, and are incredibly strong. Is this a military product modified by an armored vehicle? This thought flashed through Lu Gaofeng's mind, and he inevitably felt a little more cautious in his actions. Everything dispersed. Be careful to avoid shooting. Xiao Qi, shout to them with a loud trumpet. Get out of the car and talk to us. If you don't come down, continue to blow up with explosives. The sound of Lu Gaofeng was not concealed, which was not only a command to his companions, but also a threat to those hiding in the truck cab. Tell them not to think it's safe to hide in the car. Okay, boss. Xiao Qi picked up the speaker hanging around his waist and turned on the power. He is very familiar with this process. It's nothing more than threats and temptations. The previous personal shelter was tricked into opening the door by him. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 31 The Shortcomings of Construction Robots. And just as the bandits surrounded the truck and tried to trick them into opening the car door, Su Wu, who was far away in the shelter of a farmyard in the suburbs, also received an accident alarm from the truck. He immediately threw away the game he was fighting and ran from the entertainment room to the control center. Attacked by explosion. The large truck lost control and crashed into a house on the side of the road. After a quick glance at the log information on the console screen, Su Wu quickly grasped the general situation. This is a robber who is blocking the road. And he is not an ordinary bandit, and he is just as good as a professional. After thinking for a while, Su Wu quickly made a decision. Start issuing a series of combat orders. The number 3 construction robot takes out the assault rifle. Load the ammunition and lower the window. Freely shoot at all outside activities. The number 4 construction robot takes the crossbow. Be prepared for auxiliary support. Faced with such deadly bandits who had explosives on the ground, there was no room for negotiation. There will definitely be no mistake in killing them. Following Su Wu's orders. As the supercomputer-grade laptop with the shelter intelligence core, the power consumption of the control center immediately increased by a huge margin. Under the control of primary artificial intelligence, a large amount of computing power has been added to the 2 construction robots that are about to fight in a long range. After more than 10 seconds, everything is ready. The window on the side where the number 3 building robot was located began to slowly descend. Boss, I've reacted. Outside the truck, Xiaoqi immediately noticed the movement of the car window. He was shocked and subconsciously put down the horn in his hand. He hugged and rushed to the bottom of the car door in a few steps. Then take a homemade explosive bag from your backpack. He skillfully ignites the lead and throws it into the open car window. Judging from his series of decisive and harsh operations, he obviously had no intention of leaving any survivor. As long as he gets a chance, he will dare to blow people to death. Because the movements are too skillful and smooth. The explosive pack that Xiaoqi threw out flew into the car window very smoothly. But just as he was about to lie down and avoid the aftermath of the explosion, from the corner of his eyes, he suddenly glanced at a black muzzle that was poked out from the car window. What made him even more creepy was that the muzzle had already pointed downwards and was aimed at his head. Damn! Xiaoqi had time to swear. The next moment, a bullet shot through his forehead. Boom! Almost as Xiaoqi died, the explosives he threw into the cab also began to explode. A large amount of fire and thick smoke rages in the narrow space of the cab. Then slowly floated out through the open car window. Sure enough, there is a gun. Looking at the truck's peak in the distance, looking at the dead Xiaoqi, my heart was thrilled. I can't help but feel grateful for my caution. But this is all over. In such a narrow space, I ate Xiaoqi's explosives. Even if you are fully armed wearing bulletproof vests and heavy helmets, you won't be able to survive. Lu, Hongshan, you two go and pry open the cab. Find out if there is a key to the rear compartment. Turning his head, Lu Gaofeng casually pointed at his 2 younger brothers to clean the battlefield. This is a dangerous finishing work. The 2 bandits named nodded. Carrying a baseball bat and a crowbar, each slowly walked towards the still smoking truck cab. But without waiting for them to really get closer. With a sudden click, the door of the cab was pushed open from the inside out. A steel robot with an assault rifle and staggered in the cab, walked down. What is that? The dark construction robot smoked by explosives has a very impactful appearance. The robbers who saw it for the first time couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. They woke up in vain until the construction robot raised the assault rifle in his hand and pointed the muzzle at them. Be careful of concealment. Lu Gaofeng shouted, and lie down first, then rolled all the way behind the trash can next to him. And the other few people were not so lucky. They had a beat slower reaction, and as soon as they made some moves, they all fell under the muzzle of the construction robot's continuous firing. Damn it. Lu Gaofeng's eyes were so that these people were the foundation of his existence in the end of the world. As a result, it's all gone all at once. He gasped fiercely, gritted his teeth, took advantage of the gap in the construction robot's ammunition, and raised the earth gun in his hand and pulled the trigger several times in succession at the other party. Bang bang bang. Several bullets hit the construction robot, splashing sparks on its steel skeleton. One of the bullets was even more lucky and hit the finger of the construction robot on the trigger of the assault rifle. Break its fingers together with the rifle. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. Good opportunity. Lu Gaofeng was overjoyed. He hurriedly threw away the earth gun that had already been shot, picked up a metal bat that had dropped by his companion, rushed to the back of the construction robot in a few steps, and smashed it hard at its leg joint. No surprises. After all, the construction robot is just a humanoid robot worth more than 200 kilograms, and the materials used are just ordinary steel. With a swing of all his strength on Lu Gaofeng, he immediately lost his balance and fell to the ground. Go to die. The construction robot that lost its weapons and fell to the ground no longer has any threat to the peaks of the road. He stepped forward and stepped on the construction robot with his feet, raised the bat in his hand, and tried to completely smash it with brute force. However, just as his bat was about to fall, a crossbow arrow penetrated his arm silently. He groaned, and before he could come back to his senses, another crossbow arrow penetrated his chest from behind. Deprived him of his last trace of resistance. At this point, this short and extremely dangerous life and death battle ended with the robbers' entire army being wiped out. Distance. Inside the shelter under the farmyard. Su Wu, who was watching, breathed a relaxed sigh and relaxed. The intensity of this battle was somewhat beyond his expectations. I almost broke down. Luckily luck is on my side. I looked at the condition of the truck. Even after 2 consecutive explosions and 1 collision, the large truck loaded with armored attributes is still in good condition and does not even need to be repaired. Let the construction robot clean the battlefield and continue to return. Su Wu recalled the operation log of artificial intelligence, compared the playback of the battle video just now, and carefully reviewed it. The performance of construction robots in actual combat is not as useful as Su Wu imagined. Its body structure and the materials used are all aimed at completing the work of construction workers. There are almost no requirements for the sensitivity and protective performance of the body. And these 2 points are one of the most important elements in the battle. At the beginning, when the bomb was thrown in from the other side, the artificial intelligence monitored anomalies. But it is limited by the speed of the reaction of construction robots. Even if every coordinate of the bomb falls is calculated in advance, the construction robot cannot intercept it in time. It caused the bomb to explode in the cab. The number 3 construction robot was slightly damaged, and the number 4 construction robot went down for more than 10 seconds before it returned to normal. The same is true for shooting with firearms later. From locking, moving the muzzle, to pressing the trigger to firing the gun. Artificial intelligence provides the most accurate operational solution in milliseconds. But the construction robot is only a little faster than the old lady in the process of carrying out the plan. There are many missed opportunities in the end. He let go of the most elite bandit leader and almost made him turn the tables. Chapter 32 Air Firepower Platform. The more analyzed, the more dissatisfied Su Wu was the construction robot's combat capability. But this is an infrastructure and hardware problem. Unless it is completely redesigned. Otherwise there is no way to solve it. This time, it's not sure if it's next time. You can't continue like this. After the review, Su Wu took a deep breath. The pressure and sense of crisis arise from this unexpected encounter made him realize that he must build a more professional armed force to deal with the gradual collapse of the Doomsday Order, threats from the same kind. However, how to do it made him a little difficult for a while. Developing armed forces can be done, but it cannot occupy too much resources. At the same time, it must also have a crushing advantage in combat. Otherwise there will be no meaning of development. I thought hard for more than 10 minutes. In the end, Su Wu turned his attention to the field of drones. This time, the supplies he purchased from the official shelter included various models of commercial drones. The most expensive one is the K2 series agricultural drone. As a mass-produced commercial drone, the K2 series agricultural drone has various obvious disadvantages. Its body is mainly made of plastic and thin metal sheets, and its own defense is almost zero. Even if a stone the size of a fist is hit on the front, it may crash on the spot. The mass-produced motor and poor cooling system allow it to work normally in an environment below 65 degrees. At the same time, the fastest flight speed is only 3 meters per second, and the maximum flight altitude is below 200 meters. No normal adult has run fast. But all of this cannot erase or offset the two extremely unique advantages it has. It is an air unit and has a load capacity of up to 50 kg. These two advantages give the K2 series agricultural drones an infinitely broad modification potential. The former allows it to ignore obstacles and terrain and easily reach any battlefield. The latter can carry enough ammunition to dominate the battlefield with absolute firepower. Just choose it. Su Wu made the decision. He asked a construction robot to go to the warehouse and brought the only two K2 series agricultural drones to the manufacturing center. Then scan, model, and draw the most accurate three-dimensional model used to facilitate modification and design. First of all, in terms of positioning, it should be a long-range bombing weapon. A load of 50 kilograms must be at least 40 kilograms for carrying explosives. The force is flying. No matter what kind of enemy you face, a wave of bombs will definitely be able to clear the scene. As for the source of the explosives, Su Wukai and the official shelter traded hundreds of tons of fertilizer and daily chemicals. Just extract it from it. Although the quality may not be as good as the fine gunpowder you get from the heavy night. But it's more than enough to just make bombs. With the positioning, the remaining designs will be much easier. In the way of bombing, Su Wu rejected the inefficient method of throwing bombs directly, which is half ruled by luck. Choosing a rocket that will sacrifice an additional load, but with a longer range and more accurate range. A K2 series agricultural drone has a total load capacity of 50 kilograms and can carry 5 individual class rockets with an average weight of 8.5 kg. The remaining 7.5 kilograms of load margin can also be used to load other accessories. For example, a more efficient cooling system allows drones to fly normally in an environment of 85 degrees. For example, the tighter waterproof and air filtration system allows drones to shuttle through the rain screen and the smoke generated by combustion. There is also fine-tuning of the fuselage structure, allowing the drone to quickly restore balance and continue to fly and fight even if it is attacked with the assistance of artificial intelligence. A series of modification designs have been continuously born under Su Wu's considerations. Then, through the simulation and calculation of artificial intelligence, it is transformed into practical and practical modified drawings. Then, through the hands of engineering robots, it was truly installed on the K2 series agricultural drone. More than 10 hours later, two K2 series agricultural drones loaded with rocket launch nests appeared on the manufacturing platform of the Shelter Manufacturing Center. It was formally incorporated into the combat command system of the shelter. Now I finally have a real armed force. Looking at the console screen, icons representing two K2 series agricultural drones. A moment of satisfaction and peace of mind arose in Su Wu's heart. And this is just the beginning. There are still many areas to expand later. Thinking about it. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. Su Wu added a drawing of a foldable shooting platform, allowing the engineering robot to create 10 units according to the drawings. This shooting platform has a very simple structure. It consists of an assault rifle, a large ammunition compartment, a camera with infrared function, a base that can rotate freely at 360 degrees, and a microcomputer. Its total mass is 40 kilograms and can be folded into a metal box in a dormant state. It can be carried by the K2 series agricultural drone that has been fired from rockets and airdropped to any designated location. Then, after being placed at the location, the combat mode will be automatically launched, and the AI remote-controlled attack in the shelter will be marked as the enemy's target. At the same time, in addition to going out to fight, they can be usually arranged in key locations of farmyards on the surface and underground shelters. As a conventional shelter defense facility, the rockets of the K2 series agricultural drones are the first line of defense. The folding shooting platform is the second line of defense. Finally, a construction robot equipped with an automatic rifle, and an engineering robot, can form a third line of defense. Unless facing a regular army with a built-in lineup, no one is likely to attack the shelter when they come. Commanded the modified K2 series agricultural drones and practiced outside. Through the screen, I witnessed a rocket it carried successfully ignited, hitting a small hill more than 200 meters away. Suwu finished his work with satisfaction. The next few days. Everything goes well. Large trucks continue to transport the materials purchased from the official shelter to the farmhouse yard day and night. Then, it is picked by construction robots and stored in the manufacturing center warehouse on the second floor of the underground floor of the refuge, the living material warehouse, and the feed planting area on the third floor of the underground floor according to the type. Some materials that are not picky about the environment and are resistant to storage, such as cement, are piled directly into simple sheds in the small courtyard of the farmhouse on the surface, and even in the two-story building where people originally lived. With abundant material support, Suwu quickly completed the final reconstruction of the underground three-story aquaculture factory. Let the purchased fish fry, the eggs and duck eggs to be hatched, etc. settle down successfully inside. At the same time, seeds were all sown on hundreds of soilless cultivation shelves in the feed planting area. Just wait for them to sprout and grow. And during this period, the workload of shelters surged a lot. Suwu had to spend another 15 survival points and added 3 construction robots to make up for the labor gap. So far, at the end of Suwu's second month of building the shelter, his number of construction robots reached 7. The refuge begins to show a hint of prosperity. Chapter 33 Animals under Natural Disasters. Current territory. Livable personal sanctuary, 55%, fixed daily survival point +3. Close black lens bracket. Current remaining survival points, 45. Close black lens bracket. A new day. Looking at the shelter level, pushing to half the experience bar. Suwu is in a pretty good mood. At this speed, it won't take long to upgrade the shelter to the next level. At that time, we will not talk about opening up new system functions. At least, the fixed daily survival point income will definitely increase a little further. Life will get better and better if you can see the naked eye. After washing up, holding a piece of roasted, soft bread, Suwu came to the control center's operating table according to his usual habits and conducted a routine inspection of the shelter and the surrounding area. The whole night passed. There was little change inside the shelter. Only the engineering team is still on the 4 underground floors, constantly digging and excavating. Continuously expanding the space of refuge. There was unexpected movement outside the shelter. Except for the occasional large trucks that transport goods back and forth. A group of unknown birds passed by in the sky, and 1 or 2 small animals appeared in the rocky beach in the distance. Under this high temperature, surface animals have not yet completely extinct. It's really tenacious. Suwu was a little surprised. This may be the so-called life will find a way out. Not only humans, but other animals are also struggling to survive in extreme environments. After checking the log, confirm that the surrounding environment around the shelter is temporarily safe. Suwu began to look through the shelter's material consumption list again. It was discovered that the most frequently used material for building shelters, stone and construction waste, that is, concrete blocks, were about to come to an end. It seems that a team to go out to dig is set up. Suwu pondered. Although the stones are everywhere outside the farmyard. But most of them are strange and not small in size. Plus most of them are buried deep in the soil. It is not easy to dig them out. As for construction waste, it is even hard to say. According to the information that Suwu has, at least you have to go to an abandoned village 2 kilometers away and dismantle the houses by yourself to obtain a sufficient amount of construction waste. And once such a long distance is opened, the risks are at least 2 orders of magnitude higher than those in a small farmyard. Not suitable for part-time jobs by a valuable engineering team. Proficient in opening the design software, Suwu began to conceive how to build such a team dedicated to excavating and transporting building materials. First, by convention, it cannot be too large in scale. The engineering teams used to expand the shelter only have a few micro-vehicles and construction equipment. As an attachment to one of the raw materials for them, it is even less likely to be much larger. But if we consider the scale limit, in fact, there is no need to create separate units for excavators, electric picks necessary to demolish houses and deal with 2 huge stones. They can be integrated into the same transport vehicle to save manufacturing costs. The only disadvantage is that this will reduce some collection efficiency. However, the disadvantages in this aspect can be basically ignored when the mechanical unit can continue to work for 24 hours. Under a long working time, even the low work efficiency can accumulate sufficient results. Draw on the design drawing. Soon, a originally complete excavation and transportation team was streamlined by Suwu as a special transport vehicle that was lonely. The appearance of this special transport vehicle is somewhat similar to a micro-transport vehicle. There is no cab, only a tank-like crawler chassis and an open car bucket. At the same time, there is also a metal hanging compartment at the rear of the car that is only 1/5 the size of the car. There are built-in electric picks, robotic arm buckets and other power tools, which can be used to work by yourself after arriving at the destination. Considering that long-distance work is needed, improving the capacity can significantly improve overall efficiency, but the cost will not increase too much. The special transport vehicle is a full circle larger than the micro-transport vehicle. The length of the whole vehicle is nearly 5 meters, which is not much different from that of ordinary family cars. At the same time, the load is flush with the large truck, and it also reaches 20 tons. A car is a mining and transportation team. This is worthy of the special prefix. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. Looking at the design artwork he drew himself, Suwu showed a satisfied expression. What's more important is that while the artwork is released, artificial intelligence simultaneously lists specific manufacturing solutions and required materials. With the help of engineering robots and some raw materials traded from the official shelter, 97% of the spare parts of special transport vehicles can be produced by themselves, and the total production time is no more than 10 hours. Such a high degree of completion means that Suwu will probably only need 5 to 6 points to obtain a finished product of a special transport vehicle. Compared with the initial manufacturing of micro-transporters, the cost of micro-excavators was significantly reduced. No delay. After the design drawing is completed, Suwu adds it to the manufacturing list to be manufactured in the manufacturing center. This necessary work was finished. Suwu did not leave the control center. On the console, he switched the wide screen to another interface. The start button was pressed. 8 or 9 seconds later, a concrete cast floor slab with a dark sky appeared on the screen. This is from the perspective of the drone. During the period when transporting the official shelter supplies traded, Suwu was not doing nothing. Relying on his abundant supplies, he transformed the inside and outside of the shelter to a certain extent. One of the most important changes is the construction of a vertical passage connecting the interior of the shelter and the roof of the second-story residential building of the farmyard. The diameter of this passage is about 1 meter, and it is equipped with a lifting platform and multiple explosion-proof isolation doors that can be closed automatically. While ensuring the absolute safety of the shelter itself, all models of drones can be quickly released, including the K2 agricultural drone in the shelter. In an emergency, if necessary, this vertical passage can even be transformed into a rocket launch silo. Launch the rockets in the shelter directly. Reconnaissance drone marshalling is ready. Closing square bracket. The surrounding environment monitoring is normal. Closing square bracket. The current real-time temperature is 67.5 degrees. Closing square bracket. Start to take off. Closing square bracket. In a dark and quiet world, 3 drones, the size of a palm, flashed with faint lights, slowly took off from the roof of the farmyard. After circling in the air for several times, they gradually flew towards the distant mountains. Suwu had long been curious about the mountains that had been swept by unprecedented fires. Now that I have free time, I naturally want to explore it. Chapter 34 Exploring the Mountains. A few minutes later, the reconnaissance drone entered the mountain range. At this time, the mountainous areas had no longer the lush forests that were once prosperous. There are dark wasteland everywhere. Only occasionally are one or two trees burned to coke, still standing stubbornly. From time to time, there were also wisps of gray and black smoke rising from all over the place. It was a forest fire that had not yet been completely extinguished, lying dormant among the ashes. A strong airflow swept over. The reconnaissance drone in midair was stirred up and down. The AI in the shelter sensed the danger and immediately began to take over the control of the drone. Let it descend urgently to avoid turbulence from the sky. After more than 10 seconds, the reconnaissance drone regained balance. At this time, it was only a height of more than 10 meters from the ground. At this height, all the scenery on the ground becomes clearer. It seems like there is a shelter here. Suwu, who had been observing in front of the console screen, had a look. I noticed an abnormality in the screen. He had arisen the idea of inquiry. Immediately manipulated the drone and flew towards it. A distance of hundreds of meters flashed by. Soon, a shelter with a curled door burned by fire appeared on the screen. Suwu carefully observed Banshong and found that there was a crack about 10 centimeters wide at the edge of the door crack. It just so happens that reconnaissance drones can be allowed to enter. Go in and take a look. Without hesitation, Suwu made a decision on the spot. If he were there, he might not have been so impulsive and risky. But now, the one responsible for exploration is a drone, so there is nothing to say, just be reckless. Switch the reconnaissance drone to autonomous driving mode. The drone is manipulated by artificial intelligence through that narrow entrance. A burnt corpse suddenly appeared in the camera and then quickly enlarged. Suwu was almost frightened when he saw it. But soon, as the drone automatically raised its height in the shelter, the nervousness gradually relaxed. He noticed that it was just an ordinary body of the victim. It's just that it's very close to the crack of the gate. Without stopping the victims for more attention, Suwu turned on the searchlight on the reconnaissance drone and began to observe the environment inside the shelter. The shelter looks like it was transformed from an ordinary cave. Through the entrance, an irregular passage several meters long is a spacious cave of about 200 square meters. In the cave, there were dark objects that had been burned into wreckage everywhere. There are only a few large pieces of furniture, and they barely retain the original metal frame. This fire is so big. Suwu raised his eyebrows, and he could even imagine that the scene was like purgatory here when the wildfires spread. Obviously, a metal gate and a mountain wall several meters thick did not allow the owners here to avoid the disaster. Stayed in the cave for a while. Nothing valuable was found. Suwu was not disappointed, and directed the reconnaissance drone to leave the shelter and continue wandering in the mountains. Next, a whole day. Except for the middle returning several charges. Reconnaissance drones are all shuttled through the mountains. I searched the mountain area within 30 kilometers of Suwu's refuge inch by inch. The results cannot be said to be rich, but they are not small. He also discovered 2 unmanned shelters and 4 normal shelters that were suspected to be still inhabited. There is also a cave with a lot of steel piled up. The proportion of survivors is much higher than expected. I underestimated the human ability to survive. There is another cave where steel is stored. I don't know if its owner is still there. Silently mark the 4 normal shelters and caves that store steel on the map. Suwu felt a little excited. But soon, he shook his head again. Now he is not short of steel for the time being, so there is no need to do some stealing. You can spend time slowly to determine the ownership of that batch of steel. At that time, whether it is a transaction or a direct acquisition, you will feel more at ease. July 1st. The haze that has been inflated for days has shown signs of dissipation. At noon, the sun will occasionally hit the ground. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. But this does not mean that the environment is getting better. Instead, it is sliding towards purgatory with a frightening trend. That afternoon, at 2:27 The temperature in Zhonghe City officially reached 70 degrees. Workers who are still stranded outside cannot work properly even if they wear special cooling equipment. You can only urgently withdraw to the shelter. On the earth, there was almost dead silent at this point. 2 hours later, a storm that covered the sky and the sun swept over. The strong winds passed through the city, destroying street lights, signs, and even some houses and warehouses that were not strong enough. Endless sand and gravel fell in the storm, splashing on every corner of the earth like heavy rain. Farmhouse courtyard. The second floor of the underground shelter. Su Wu, who received the artificial intelligence alert, hurried to the control center. He sat in front of the console with a serious expression and observed the sudden terrifying storm through the cameras set up outside. The wind raged. The mountains in the distance have already disappeared in the turbid yellow sand. In the nearby gravel beach, many fist-sized stones gradually began to break free from the constraints of the soil and rolled on the ground. Occasionally, stones flew high with strong airflow and crashed into the wall of the farmyard like bullets. Leave a shallow trace on it. Bang! A crisp sound appeared. A camera located on the residential building of a farmhouse yard was hit by a stone falling from the sky. Under the impact of huge kinetic energy, the mirror of the camera cracked on the spot and could no longer work normally. Only the surviving audio module is left, and the outside world is still transmitting the sound of wind to the shelter console. The wind is approaching level 11. Su Wu's eyes turned to another intact surveillance screen. The worries in my heart are aggravated. After thinking about it, he closed the access and door of the shelter to the outside. Let the engineering team that is digging the 4 underground floors of the shelter temporarily stop transporting soil outward. With a toy-like small body like a miniature transport truck, you may not be able to overturn the car when you go out at this time. If your luck is even worse, you may be dragged into heaven. It's better to stay in the shelter honestly and wait for the storm to pass. As for the steel and cement piled in the yard, scrap household appliances, vans parked in simple carports, and various supplies temporarily stored in the second-story residential building. It can only be left to fate. The storm came too quickly and there was no time to transfer and reinforce them. I hope I can get through it. Su Wu murmured to himself. Opening parenthesis. Chapter 35 The Raid Storm. In addition to the materials located on the surface, the large trucks that are still performing transportation tasks outside are relatively less worried about Su Wu. The huge steel beast with a weight of more than 20 tons is even more than most private houses in terms of safety and stability. However, for prudent considerations, Su Wu also suspended the transportation task of large trucks. Let it find a leeward alley in the city to stop temporarily. The third hour after the storm came. The raging wind not only showed no sign of stopping, but became more violent. Not far from the alley where the large trucks were parked, a 4-story house could not withstand the squeezing of the strong wind and collapsed at some point. Countless debris poured down, instantly blocking the streets. Then a large amount of lighter mass debris and gravel was brought into the air by strong winds, hitting the surrounding buildings like storms. Meanwhile, the suburbs outside the city. The control center underground in the farmhouse courtyard, Su Wu, who was communicating information with other shelter owners in the chat group, suddenly found that the network was intermittent at the beginning, and the delay was getting higher and higher. In the end, it was completely broken. No reconnection to the network again. It should be that the signal tower was blown down by the wind. Su Wu checked and found the reason quickly. Signal towers are not a fortress. In the storm of dangerous overturning of brick and stone houses, it is very normal for a relatively fragile signal tower to have problems. It's a problem. Su Wu sighed silently. If it is a peaceful era, if there is a problem with the signal tower, it will be post-disaster reconstruction. However, in the end-of-day environment, it is extremely difficult for ordinary workers to even get out of shelter. How much effort can the official do to repair the signal tower that does not affect basic survival? The answer is obvious. If nothing unexpected happens, after the network is disconnected this time, there will be no more reopening for a long time in the future, and perhaps even until humans are destroyed. This evening, Su Wu stayed alone in the silent control center, staring at the rocky beach under the turbulent wind on the screen for a long time, feeling an unspeakable loneliness for the first time. But his emotions cannot be told to anyone. Even the farthest distance that can be reached by the eyes is just the wasteland captured by the surveillance, which is only a few hundred meters apart. Late at night, there was no trace of light under the dark sky. The winds that ravaged the earth weakened. According to the official news released on the broadcast, Zhonghe City has entered the intermittent period of the storm, but in the next 2 to 3 hours, there is still a high probability of encountering stronger wind attacks. Conservative estimates may reach level 17 or above. Level 17 storm. It is already the highest level of wind power classification in humans. A true natural disaster. Suwu's two-story building located on the surface may not necessarily survive a storm of that level. We must seize the time to rescue the supplies on the ground. Su Wu, who was a little drowsy, woke up again under the stimulation of this official news. He suspended all work in the shelter and sent the engineering team on the 4th floor of the underground, a special transport vehicle that had just been built and had not yet officially started working, and all construction robots to the ground. Let them urgently transport all the supplies on the ground into the shelter. At the same time, he did not forget to issue an order to return to the shelter to the large trucks far away in the urban area of Zhonghe City. There are certain risks to rushing to the road now, but compared to the terrifying disaster that is about to face, this risk is completely within a bearable range. Preferred transfer of used household appliances, piped cables, rubber tires, etc. Then there are toilet paper, soap, plastic products placed in the residential building. Finally, it's cement and steel. Open the list of supplies temporarily stored on the surface. According to different importance, Suwu sorted out the order of transfer of various materials. In this order, there is a slightly abnormal phenomenon that, as the acquisition of waste household appliances and waste tires with relatively low prices, it is the most preferred object to transfer. The reason for this arrangement is, on the one hand, because they are lightweight and irregular in size, and are the most likely materials to be swept away by strong winds. On the other hand, it is because they themselves contain a variety of rare metals and are one of the necessary sources of raw materials for future manufacturing of many precision machinery. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. Without these used home appliances, it would be quite difficult for Su Wulian to produce one more construction robot. Not to mention that it is absolutely impossible to create, but at least, the number of survival points consumed must be much higher. Then toilet paper, plastic products, etc. are consumables that occupy a lot of space. They have little demands on storage environments, and it is not cost-effective to put them in shelters with limited space. Therefore, most of them were piled in the houses on the ground before. But that doesn't mean they are not important. The situation is urgent now. If you don't want to lose anything, even if you pile it into the corridor of the shelter's living area, you must move them all into the shelter. As for the final cement and steel, because of the large number, Suwu was not sure to move them all into shelter before the 12th level storm came. You can only count as much as you move. The surface. The steel door of the refuge slowly opened. 5 construction robots slowly stepped onto the ground under the lights of the passage. The strong wind wrapped around the fine sand and gravel, hitting their steel bodies, making clusters of sounds, making their steps look a little shaky. Although it is currently the storm interval, the average wind speed hovers around the ground as about level 8. Ordinary people still have considerable dangers in this environment. In addition, even in such strong winds, the ambient temperature has never been lower than 70 degrees. It was as hot as a ***** of a different star. It is almost unimaginable that ordinary people pay to do this surface activity. Fortunately, for robots, as long as the temperature is not so high that it breaks through the heat dissipation system and burns down the internal electronic components, no matter how harsh the environment is, it is not much different from the ordinary situation. Construction robots turned on the searchlights on their bodies and explored on the ground. Soon they gathered towards the location where the used appliances were located. Behind them, 2 miniature transport vehicles, 2 miniature excavators belonging to the engineering team, as well as the newly built special transport vehicles, also drove over. 3 minutes later, the first mini transporter full of used household appliances began to return. It passes through the path between cement, steel and scrap garbage, enters the sloping downward passage of the shelter, and then rides the spacious lifting platform inside the shelter to the fourth underground floor. The breeding factory on the third floor of the shelter has officially started operation, and almost all the internal space has been utilized to the extreme. There is no room for storage at all. I can only make do with the excavation of most of the underground fourth floor to serve as a temporary transfer warehouse. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 36 Rescue Materials. While the transport truck is busy transferring supplies, the precious engineering robot affiliated to the engineering team and the engineering robot from the manufacturing center were also sent to the ground by Su Wu. Their task is to operate the drilling machine for drilling. Then nail down the steel bars and ropes to reinforce the cement and steel on the ground. Doing so may not completely ensure that the materials are safe and sound. But some losses can be recovered. The best solution that can be found at present. Certainly. There are also disadvantages to doing this. The engineering robot itself is expensive and sophisticated. If something happens during construction, it is very likely that they can be repaired only with survival points. To some extent, this is a kind of risk-taking and gambling act. In the dark farmyard, as the two engineering robots enter construction state, high-energy lasers begin to shine brightly in the dark from time to time. A large number of steel bars were knocked deep into the ground, and then welded to each other in the hands of the engineering robot to form a solid mesh steel cage, which gathered piles of cement and steel plates into it. More than half an hour later, as the engineering robot completed the scheduled task ahead of schedule with an efficiency exceeding expectations, Su Wu simply asked them to use materials locally and continued to weld iron plates on the built steel cages. This will enhance wind protection. At the same time, we also began to renovate and reinforce the two-story houses. The two-story houses on the ground are natural shelters. If possible, Su Wu would not want it to collapse in the storm. The second hour after the transfer of materials begins. The storm that had been relatively gentle gradually became violent. The wind power rose from level 8 to level 10, and then approached level 11 bit by bit. The construction robot, which is still moving on the ground, begins to deform significantly. Work efficiency is reduced at a speed visible to the naked eye. It's time to withdraw. Su Wu was not greedy and decisively asked the construction robot to lock the doors of the houses. By the way, I drove out the van parked in the simple carport and returned to the shelter with the engineering team. After 2 hours of handling, the used household appliances in the yard and other messy things acquired were basically transferred to the fourth floor of the shelter. Most of the supplies in the private houses have been moved to the living area and manufacturing center on the second floor of the shelter. Plus reinforcement projects for the ground. In fact, there is almost no need to worry too much about the next storm. However, it was at this time that Su Wu discovered that the large truck that he had not taken care of after giving the return order before. There is no sign of coming back until now. With a little bad premonition, Su Wu contacted the large truck through the console. A piece of ruins that could not be seen at the edge of the headlights immediately appeared on the screen. The road is blocked. Su Wu's heart sank and felt the urgency and crisis. According to the scale of the ruins in front of you, it is probably impossible to clear a passage in less than a few hours. Looking at the two construction robots accompanying the car, they were still carrying stones in the strong wind. Su Wu did not dare to delay time, so he quickly opened the map of Zhonghe City and tried to replan the route. Fortunately, the location where the large trucks were blocked was still in the margins of the city. Su Wu easily found an alternative solution. A detour right away. Submit the new driving route to artificial intelligence. Su Wu let it execute it immediately without hesitation. Following Su Wu's orders, the two construction robots stopped their work and returned to the truck cab slowly. Then the taillights of the large truck flashed and began to turn around in place, heading towards another longer unknown road. After more than 10 minutes, a piece of billboards and various debris swept by the wind appeared in front of the large truck. Once again blocked its way forward. Faced with this kind of accident, Su Wu was silent for a moment and did not make the large truck turn around again. It's too late to change routes now. The wind outside the car has reached level 12. The howling wind hit the truck's body, causing the large truck full of cargo to tremble slightly from time to time. If you take a detour, maybe you might as well find a place to hide in the city. Zoom in the screen. Suwoo carefully observed the debris blocking his face. Compared with the ruins that were previously unseen, the overall scale of this debris blocking the road is not too large. It only occupies a passage of about 20 meters. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. If you move quickly enough, you may not be able to clean them up before the real storm comes. But there is another problem here. How to clean it up. Large trucks are vehicles that specialize in transporting materials and have no other special functions. Under such a big storm outside, Suwoo did not dare to let the construction robots accompanying the car go down. If you accidentally fail to clear the road, the construction robot might have been swept away by the strong wind. Bang! A loud bang passed down from the roof of the truck. Suwoo was startled and quickly switched to the roof of the car to monitor. I found that the loud noise was the movement caused by a billboard falling from a high altitude to the carriage. Fortunately, the truck has additional armor attributes, and the body is basically cast from high-strength alloy. The accident did not cause any obvious harm to the truck. After such a fuss, Suwoo was even more afraid to let the construction robot go out. If it is smashed, the loss will be a precious survival point. Since the truck cannot solve it on its own, it's better to just send another car to rescue. Given the idea of a solution from the large truck, Suwoo turned his attention to the special transport truck that was parked in the shelter. This tracked vehicle, which integrates dismantling, excavation and transportation, is also extremely efficient in cleaning roadblocks. The only thing that makes people worry is whether the changing storm outside will give it time to play. I hope it's still time. Suwoo took a look at the time and it was 2:47 in the morning. There is not much time left before the official report of the strong storm. He gritted his teeth and decided to take another bet. The surface. The thick iron door buried by some sand and gravel opened again. An unmanned tracked car drove into the ground in the strong wind. The wind speed is 34 meters per second. Stability has little impact. Suwoo, who was sitting in the control center and monitoring the status of the special transport vehicle, quietly breathed a sigh of relief. After all, it is a tracked car, even if it weighs less than a large truck. But its stability in the storm is not inferior to the former. After more than 10 seconds, passing the initial adaptation period, the special transport vehicle drove into the highway and directly pulled the speed to a maximum of 60 kilometers per hour, rushing towards the location where the large trucks in the city were located. Chapter 37 Hope. No surprises along the way. The special transport vehicle soon entered the city and met the large truck with a roadblock of about 20 meters. The headlights of the two cars meet in the darkness. It illuminates the surroundings as if it were daylight. It's time to do work. Suwoo controlled the special transport vehicle, unfolded the operating platform, popped up the electric picks and buckets, and began to clean up the debris on the road. In order to improve efficiency, Suwoo did not let artificial intelligence take over the entire process. Instead, you can do it yourself. Suwoo directly ignores many debris that do not affect the passage of large trucks. Some of the large debris that have to be processed will also be crushed with an electric pick or move a few centimeters to several meters apart depending on their location, material and body shape. Try not to do anything redundant. Under this delicate micro work, the entire cleaning process progressed rapidly. On average, you can push 1 meter forward in more than 1 minute. At the same time, such high efficiency inevitably caused considerable movement. It was like the sound in the construction site, directly overwhelming the sound of the howling wind and was transmitted from afar. It brought some different kinds of vitality to the dark and lonely city. It is a kilometer or two away from the blocked large truck. In an enterprise-level medium-sized shelter. Several employees on duty in the monitoring room noticed the movement here. At this time, there are still people working outside. It's really awesome. A young employee in his 20s couldn't help but be amazed. Maybe it's an official person, there's any urgent task. Discipline over the past is more than anything else, and it can create some miracles. The person who answered the conversation was a middle-aged man in his 40s. His relatively long life experience made him subconsciously make guesses that fit his past experience. As he spoke, his expression became much lighter. No matter which person is causing trouble, it means that humans are still active on the surface, fighting extreme climate disasters while carrying out production activities. Also, as humans, they are not alone. I'll look for it. The direction of the sound is coming from Gong Street. Finally found. The operator sitting in front of the surveillance can also not hide the curiosity in his heart. With his rich experience, he quickly locked in the scene after a break. Then, with the help of a traffic camera over there that was still working, the special transport vehicles and large trucks on the street were photographed from afar. Damn, what a handsome car. It still looks like a high-tech driverless. The young employee who spoke first came to the screen and shouted. He stared at the special transport vehicle that was unfolding the operation platform to clear the barrier, as if he saw a novel toy. The unique and sci-fi appearance of the special transport vehicle is enough to bring enough sensory impact to the person you see for the first time. This is cleaning up the roadblock. To make room for the van leaving the city. The operator observed more carefully and also saw more useful information. He noticed a rock the size of a basketball on the side of the road, rolling forward under the wind, disappearing into the darkness in the distance, and couldn't help but sigh. You dare to transport it under such a storm. It's probably only the official who has the courage and confidence. If it were someone else, I'm afraid I wouldn't even dare to step out of the shelter. The middle-aged employee also came over to watch. He looked at the extremely efficient construction site of the special transport vehicle, but he thought of another thing. This is also good news for us. The official has such advanced tools. If something goes wrong with us in the future, it will probably not be difficult to wait for official rescue. More advanced vehicles and unmanned controls represent the ability to cross more severe extreme environments, and also means that they can bring hope to shelters scattered everywhere and fall into dangerous places. That's right. I will probably be more stable when I sleep in the future. The young staff agree very much. In the monitoring room, a group of people were talking and discussing it in full swing. The originally dull atmosphere was gradually dispersed with the emergence of the two cars under surveillance. Everyone's eyes add some stability and relaxation to a greater or lesser extent. That was to find a feeling of relying on it. The surface. On the street. The cleaning of special transport vehicles has come to an end. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. The wind power quietly broke through the limit of 37 meters per second and entered the range of level 13. Under this storm of intensity, many operations of special transport vehicles have become somewhat distorted. It will take more time to complete the correction and achieve the goal. But fortunately, it's almost over. With the last building's wreckage, it was violently broken by a pickaxe. Special transport vehicles and large trucks successfully merged. No celebration and delay one more second. The special transport vehicle immediately retracted its operating platform and acted as the front of a small convoy of two vehicles, and began to return to the shelter far away in Wangshi village. The wind speed is increasing faster and faster. Farmhouse courtyard. The second floor of the refuge. Su Wu, who was staying in the control center, did not relax at all because of the return sign displayed on the screen. Instead, he felt the approaching danger keenly. He noticed that the storm was constantly increasing its energy level at a much faster speed than before. According to this enhanced trend, before the convoy returns to the shelter, they may encounter level 16 or even level 17 winds. Watching quietly at the road surface of the screen where sand and gravel were flying around under the lights of the car lights, Suwu was silent for a few seconds, took a light breath, knowing that he had to make a choice. Should we completely abandon special transport vehicles, let large trucks accelerate with all their might, come back alone, or remain still as it is, and bet that the climate will not become extreme so quickly? After hesitating for half a second, Su Wu's eyes froze and he made up his mind in an instant. Take a gamble. Two vehicles running at high speed on the highway gradually slowed down and changed positions with each other under Su Wu's will. Then the front plate of the special transport vehicle is linked to the tow hook at the rear of the large truck. Under normal circumstances, this is a very simple operation. Because the outside storm was too fierce, the construction robot could not get off the car to assist, and it took more than a minute to successfully achieve it. And it turns out that the delay of more than a minute is totally worth it. Shortly after they set off on the road again, the storm along the way completely reached level 16. That moment, the sky and the ground were filled with terrifying whistling sounds. It was like the sky was about to fall, and the air turned into a huge wave. Chapter 38 Race with the Storm. The gravel flying on the highway instantly was so dense that it blocked the lights of the headlights. Make your vision unable to penetrate 2 meters away. Then these stones hit the transport trucks and trucks running at high speed. Made a crackling sound. A wave of strong sounds formed after wave, drowning out all other different sounds. Special transport vehicles are limited by their size and weight, and are the first to show signs of losing control in such extreme environments. Its car body began to shake left and right, and the amplitude gradually increased. In the end, if it weren't for the tow hook of the large truck in front, it would probably have fallen head-on into the dry canal on the side of the road. In front of the console, Su-Wu shut down the real-time images transmitted by special transport vehicles and large trucks. On the wide screen in front of him, the main view transforms into a 3-dimensional topographic map modeled after scanning the onboard radar of a large truck. Because there are too many debris rolled up by the strong wind, the topographic map is full of light spots that hinder the perspective, and it is almost impossible to see the original appearance clearly. Only by cooperating with the 3D panoramic map recorded before the natural disaster and verifying each other can we barely restore part of the landform and determine the current location of the fleet. Next to the topographic map is the various driving data of the 2 cars, including speed, steering, center of gravity, inclination amplitude, etc. Su-Wu only needs to calculate it slightly based on these ever-changing data. You can roughly know the current status of the team and the external pressures it faces. But that's all he can do. The current situation is beyond his ability. It actually evolved into a scene where primary artificial intelligence and vehicles born in the early days of the Doomsday race against natural disasters. It's almost home. The helpless Su-Wu could only look at the map at this time and silently prayed for the safety of the convoy. On the wasteland on the surface, the roaring hurricane turned into an invincible torrent, from the end of the horizon toward the direction where the mountains were. Occasionally there are 1 or 2 less reliable hills. In this extreme storm, a slight tremor appeared. Then at a certain moment, it exploded like a snow pile that was kicked and exploded. Countless soil that forms hills, small pieces of broken rocks, dead roots, etc., all shot in all directions with the wind. But it's in such a dangerous scene. 2 vehicles, one large and one small, connected together by iron chains, ran silently on the road where the boundaries were no longer visible and covered with gray sand and gravel. Through the air waves woven by many storms, we keep breaking through the waves. Small and indelible. Finally, the walls of the farmyard are far away. The 2 cars crashed open the locked door of the yard with unabated speed and rushed straight towards the entrance of the shelter in the strong wind. At the same time, the thick gates of the shelter began to slowly open simultaneously. A few seconds later, large trucks and special transport vehicles broke into the shelter entrance passage one after another. The sandstorm that was blown up by the strong wind was completely thrown out of the shelter gate that began to slowly close. The second floor of the underground control center. Su-Wu felt relieved that he had been holding. The return of the convoy means that his most important asset in the outside world is safely implemented. Next, he can stay in the shelter with peace of mind. Wait for this unprecedented storm to pass. But at this moment, a slight vibration came from the soles of the feet. Su-Wu frowned, and had not had time to find the source of the vibration. On the monitoring wall of the control center, all the monitoring images about the surface were extinguished in just a few seconds. What's going on? Su-Wu's heart that had just been relieved became tighter in an instant. He looked at the huge home screen in front of the console, and asked the artificial intelligence to check the health of the shelter first. The feedback result made him feel a little relieved. The previous abnormal movement did not erupt inside the shelter. The entire refuge, including the 4th underground floor that has not been excavated, has not been affected. Is this an earthquake? With some doubts, Su-Wu tried to figure out what was happening outside. However, because all external cameras in the shelter lost contact, this attempt had little effect. In the end, I relied on repeatedly playing the last few seconds of the screen before the ground surveillance lost contact, so I barely got some information. Not an earthquake. Or there was no sign of an earthquake being photographed during the surveillance. All the accidents come from the storm that has been invainly strengthened by the outside world. According to the analysis and calculation of the picture by artificial intelligence, the intensity of the storm active on the surface at the last moment truly reached level 17. And this is obviously not its limit yet, and it is completely unknown how far it will grow. Luckily, let the big truck come back early. If it's really hard to say. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. The line of sight was frozen in the analysis of the intensity of the level 17 wind, and Suwoo couldn't help but feel a little lucky. If he didn't persist, he would keep the big truck in the city. Something might have happened at this time. But in addition to his gratitude, a layer of haze was still inevitably covered in his heart. Hurricane over Category 17. Not to mention Zhonghe City in the hinterland of the mainland, even in the coastal areas, they can only be found from historical records. Its arrival is not a good sign. We can't focus on resisting high temperatures in the future. Other natural disasters must also be prevented. After calming down, Suwoo began to reflect on himself. This time, although it is not clear about the ground yet. But such a powerful storm passes through the border, losses are almost inevitable. The worst result is that all the materials piled up on the ground may be destroyed by the storm. This is entirely Suwoo's misjudgment. He had never expected an extreme climate such as super large storm. Fortunately, after the emergency transfer of 2 or 3 hours before, even in the worst case, the losses are still within the affordable range. At most, I feel sorry for a few days. Look at the time. It was almost 4 in the morning. Suwoo quickly sorted out today's experience again and confirmed that there was nothing urgent to deal with for the time being. Then he yawned and got up and left the console. I plan to wash up and go to bed first. No matter how powerful the storm outside is, it cannot affect the shelter located deep underground. Similarly, Suwoo, who was staying in the shelter, could not interfere with the outside world. The only thing he can do is take a good rest. Keep your energy and wait for the storm to subside. A few hours later. Noon. The storm on the surface has weakened. Suwoo, who had just woken up, received greetings from Yi Luoxuanghua through the broadcast equipment. And got a special account through her satellite network. Chapter 39 Satellite Network. Suwoo followed Yi Luoxuanghua's prompt and tossed in the control center for more than 10 minutes. A brand new network was successfully connected with the console and signal receiver installed outside the shelter. It was a wireless network formed through satellites. The signal is not very good, but it is enough to transmit text and some simple pictures. There is basically no content in the entire network, there is only an official forum and a chat channel built on the forum. Suwoo entered the account password given to him by Yi Luoxuanghua and successfully joined a sub-channel called Zhonghe City in the chat channel. Then, by surprise, I saw many familiar names there. They are almost all the owners of the shelter who have dealt with in the chat group before. There is limited communication resources now. Only some of the top hiring personnel who have passed the official certification are eligible to connect to this network. It is mainly to issue some announcements and facilitate the exchange of resources and information between shelters. Yi Luoxuanghua explained to Suwoo the original intention of the establishment of this network through private chats. Even in peacetime, satellite networking is also a relatively luxurious thing. In the end of the world, when rocket launches are becoming increasingly difficult, this kind of communication will only be more precious. The ability to quickly build such a satellite network overnight after the ground internet fails and open it to small shelters like Suwoo for free, which shows the official attention. Suwoo visited the forum for a while. I don't know if it was a hasty or intentional one. The content in the forum is quite poor, with basically only some official brief reports on recent major events, as well as public speeches from senior federal officials, etc. Valuable information is almost only in the few words in the title. And except for the official administrator, everyone has no permission to post and reply. Even browsing has considerable restrictions. Suwoo's own account can only open the federal announcement area and the local area where he is located. Even the official news released by the city next door cannot be seen. The only place where you can communicate freely is the chat channel in Zhonghe City. The control is so severe. Do you want to hide something? Suwoo was puzzled, but this question was destined to be unable to be answered in a short period of time. His current position is too low to be considered one of the people under federal rule and need to be managed. Compared with ordinary people, at most they have the title of a rural tycoon. No matter what the federal government wants to do, he is only qualified to accept it passively. Afternoon. The storm on the surface gradually stopped. Su Wu opened the door to the long-closed shelter. As the dust and gravel rolled down in the sky, all the vehicles, construction robots, and the engineering team's mechanical equipment were pulled to the ground. The ground was in a mess. The walls that originally formed the farmhouse courtyard and the two-story residential building have long disappeared. Only a small amount of building remains as traces of their once existing existence. Several piles of steel raw materials fixed on the ground were violently torn apart by the iron mesh. About 1/3 of the steel is scattered from the gap, a small part is distributed disorderly within a range of hundreds of meters around, and more are completely gone. And this is a relatively good situation. Another material, cement, which is also protected by iron mesh and steel plates, has turned into ashes physically. A total of 2,000 bags of hundreds of tons of unopened cement were all gone with the wind before they could enjoy their value. Cleaning it slowly. Seeing this messy scene, Su Wu was inevitably worried even though he was prepared. After a long silence, the robots began to sort out the endgame. The first is to clear out a clear space. The valuable materials scattered, mainly various types of steel and scrap metal, were repacked and stacked. Then, the ruins of the two-story houses that have become ruins were flattened, and some surviving building materials and daily necessities in the ruins were picked out and temporarily piled up next to the scrap metal. Neither job is complicated. With the joint efforts of 7 construction robots, 2 mini excavators, 2 mini transport vehicles, and a special transport vehicle that actually belongs to a multi-function platform, the propulsion speed is very fast. And during this period, Su Wu also obtained a specific loss report from artificial intelligence. This time the storm transited. The actual loss is slightly less than what you see or imagined. The main reason is still the result of the 2 or 3 hours of emergency transfer during the storm interval. It transferred all the lightest and most valuable parts of the materials into the shelter in time. And even the cement was pulled in most of the time. Secondly, a considerable proportion of the supplies that were blown away by the wind fell within a few kilometers of the surrounding area. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. Even if the cement that I thought had disappeared completely before, I could still find some of it. Finally, it was only a loss of 53 tons of steel, 78 tons of cement, and several other materials. In terms of value, it is less than 1/10 of the batch of materials traded with the official. Looking at the loss report, Su Wu's face looked a little better. No matter what, at least the resources he retains are still abundant now and will basically not affect the future construction plan of the shelter. Next step. Maybe it's time to consider building a bunker. As the ground clearance progresses, it gradually comes to an end. A new question was placed before Su Wu. That is how to deal with the materials on the surface. It is certainly not possible to put it in a shelter. Not only can these materials not be placed in the shelter, but the batch of materials that were previously urgently transferred cannot be stacked in the shelter for a long time. Otherwise, it will somewhat affect the daily operation and construction process of the shelter. If you cannot put it in a shelter, you can only make your own ideas on the ground. It just so happened that the farmyard was basically leveled by the storm. Su Wu could completely rebuild a stronger fortress without any scruples. Once built, it can not only store a large amount of materials as a warehouse, but also inherit the original drone takeoff and landing platform and rocket launch silo. It can also transform into a military fortress and fire whistle tower, becoming a defensive facility on the front line of shelter. In addition, there is a potential advantage. Building buildings on the ground is much easier than digging underground. Even if calculated based on the highest military standards, it will take several days to build a small bunker. The time cost paid is completely within the affordable range. It has both benefits and is not expensive. Didn't think about it for long. The heart-warming Su Wu quickly made up his mind. Let's build the bunker first. Chapter 40 Ground Bunker. But although I decided to build a bunker, but where to build it is still a question that needs to be considered. The ideal place is of course the gate of the shelter. The built bunker surrounds the exit of the shelter. If people outside want to enter the shelter, they must first conquer the bunker. The sense of security suddenly filled up. But there is a problem that cannot be avoided when doing this. The exit of the shelter is quite large. If you want to build a bunker that covers it, the scale will be at least several times higher than originally planned. The extended construction cycle during this period and the amount of additional building materials consumed far exceeded the limit that Suwu could tolerate. After thinking about it, I thought about it. The best solution is to rebuild the original house. In this way, it can directly inherit the original drone lifting platform to minimize construction costs. In addition, Suwu has experienced the storm of unexpected intrusions and the transformation of the shelter exports, but he is not really unthinkable. At present, the entrance and exit of the shelter is an inclined downward passage excavated on the flat ground. The outermost refuge gate in the passage is designed with a vertical downward design. This structure naturally has obvious defects. For example, when encountering heavy rain, it is easy to let the rainwater gather and form a puddle. If there was a little radiation or viruses in the rain, the consequences would be unimaginable. Or when there is a conflict with armed thugs, there is no outlet for cover and will be directly exposed to the guns of the thugs. The difficulty of going out to fight has increased by several levels out of thin air. According to Suwu's vision, he wanted to solve these problems. It is not necessary to build a fortress specifically. In the early stage, a concrete bungalow-sized garage was built at the exit location, and simple waterproofing and drainage measures were made. Then, with the bungalow as the core, the soil and rock excavated from the ground are slowly piled up around it, continuously strengthening the thickness and height of the bungalow until an artificial hill is formed. The original concrete bungalow was transformed into a style of refuge built in the hills. The biggest advantage of this approach is that the cost is nearly zero. Just change the route of dumping dirt and garbage while expanding the underground shelter. It is a kind of plan that does not suffer anyway, but it does not cost anyway. Try it. Evening. The faint light from the clouds gradually disappeared. A rich darkness descends on the earth. On the flat ground that originally belonged to the farmyard, several high-powered electric lights were hung on temporary road poles, illuminating the surrounding area of hundreds of meters as if it were daytime. After several hours of continuous cleaning, there are no traces of the storm here now. All supplies on the ground, including the collapsed buildings and the wreckage left by the walls, were collected by category. Not far from them, the foundation has been relaid at the location of the original houses, and the ground part of the bunker is being built. Building a bunker doesn't require so many excavators and transporters. You can free up some extra effort to do something else. Control center on the second floor of the shelter. Suwu sat in front of the console and looked at the construction site that was on track under the surveillance, and had a new idea. He did not forget that in the official shelter, there were still the last few hundred tons of materials stored and they had not had time to transport them back. The longer this thing is kept in someone else's hands, the greater the variables. Now that I have the spare energy, I naturally have to continue transporting them back as soon as possible. Think about it. Suwu did not have reckless direct actions. He activated the reconnaissance drone marshalling and asked them to reconnaissance the urban areas of Zhonghe City from the air first. Soon, a slightly unfamiliar aerial view was passed to Suwu's hands. Look down from the sky. After experiencing the unprecedented huge storm, the landforms within a dozen kilometers of the farmyard have undergone slight changes. Many sections of the road were smashed by huge rocks falling from the sky, and some places even broke directly, forming a wide crack like a river channel. That kind of terrain, not to mention large trucks, even tanks do not want to cross the past. The only way is to build a bridge on site or simply take a detour. After entering the urban area, the situation is even worse. The buildings in the urban area collapsed in the hurricane. A large number of building wreckage flooded the streets and alleys like floods, turning the originally well-connected transportation network into a Gobi desert filled with gravel. There are only a few large shopping malls that are strong enough, as well as more than 7 floors of residential buildings and commercial buildings, barely remaining as they are. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. It will not allow the entire city to return to the original state completely. It's so exaggerated. Suwu felt a little chilled when he saw it, and realized that he still underestimated the destructive power of the storm. This kind of scene may be comparable to nuclear explosions or earthquakes above magnitude 7. Just then, a slight prompt sounded. That means new news has appeared in the official forum Zhonghe City section. Su Wu temporarily put down his attention to the city and opened the forum. It was found that 2 new announcements were added to the Zhonghe City sector. The first article briefly describes the losses caused by this storm and the current situation of various official shelters in the urban area. As the highest authority of Zhonghe City, the official shelter controls the largest population and materials in the entire city. Correspondingly, they were also the party who suffered the most losses in this disaster. In just a dozen hours when the storm was raging, more than 1/3 of the ground warehouses were completely destroyed. The lost materials are close to 2 million tons. Types range from daily chemicals, vehicles, building materials, electronic components, industrial production line equipment, to food, etc. Fortunately, due to the timely warning, there were not many casualties in personnel. All the shelter equipment located underground is still functioning normally. Su Wu read the announcement carefully, and his eyes stayed in the column of lost type for several seconds. His expression gradually became solemn. Don't read the announcement's text, it seems to be an understatement. But 1/3 of the warehouses, 2 million tons, and the 3 keywords of food appear together at the same time, which means that things cannot be as small as possible. After a little translation, it can be fully understood that the official industrial production capacity has been severely damaged, the materials for maintaining the daily operation of the shelter have been greatly reduced, and the reserve grain is falling close to the warning line. Each one is heavyweight bad news. People in the official shelter. I'm afraid my life will be difficult. Faintly, Su Wu seemed to feel a slight sense of storm. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories, and never miss out on a great listen.